Boss! Guoran clenched his fists. This is impossible. Xia is definitely being framed. Guoran's blazing killing intent caused that person to jump. He had felt Guoran to be weak and not a threat, which was precisely why he had targeted Guoran. He had even thought Guoran was some young master who had come out to enjoy the world. Guoran's killing intent erupted when he heard about the warrant for Xia. He refused to believe that Xia would do something like betraying his sect and master. Continue. Long Chen's expression was also gloomy. He understood Xia character. He wasn't such a person. There must be some secrets within this matter. Through that person's explanation, Long Chen learned that Xia had only been a worker in the Spirit Rune Pavilion at the start. He had been waiting on the talisman apprentices. Later on, he had an opportunity. An instructor discovered his immense talent and accepted him as a disciple. In just half a year, he passed the trials and became a talisman master. Based on his age, he was one of the Spirit Rune Pavilion's 10 youngest talisman masters in all of history. Could be said that Xia had shaken the entire Spirit Rune Pavilion at that time. If it weren't for his unmistakably low spiritual strength, people would even suspect that he was a reincarnation of an old monster. After becoming a talisman master, he worked hard on mastering the various talisman arts. With his immense talent, he mastered the various kinds of talismans and runes. In just a year, he started the trial to be promoted to a talisman grandmaster. That news shook the entire heavenly talisman starfield. It had to be known that a talisman master in their 20s was already in existence that deserved to have their own page in the heavenly talisman starfield's history. Regretfully, at that time, Xia failed the trial. While his soul energy's purity did reach the level of a talisman grandmaster, it wasn't strong enough. There were 7 talismans that he had to make in the trial, and after making 6, he severely overdrafted his soul energy, causing him to fail on the 7th. Despite that, it caused quite a ruckus. That was because his first 6 talismans had all passed the mark. It had to be known that the trial for becoming a talisman grandmaster was extremely stringent. The difficulty to make those 6 talismans was unimaginable. But Xia had passed all of them. His talent was something countless people admire, but also envied. To sum it up, at that time, Xia name became known throughout the heavenly talisman starfield. This talent made him a monster. Some people guessed that he would pass the trial within 3 years and become a talisman grandmaster. Even if he took 3 years to pass, he would still be history's youngest talisman grandmaster. What he was lacking was not talent or comprehension, nor was it experience. It was simply his soul energy. His soul energy would only grow stronger over time as his cultivation base increased. Although he hadn't passed that trial, he was already viewed as a talisman grandmaster. There was no suspense about him joining their ranks. The only question was how long would he need to pass the trial? 1 year? 2 years? Or 3 years? As the Spirit Rune Pavilion's brightest heavenly genius, he made all others appear dull and drab. None of them could compare to him. Xia even ended up in a marriage agreement with the granddaughter of the Spirit Rune Pavilion's master. The pavilion master, Gong Sun Xian, supported the marriage. His granddaughter, Gong Sun Zi, was also very talented. The two of them were viewed as a perfect couple, the envy of countless people. For the Spirit Rune Pavilion to end up with 2 peak heavenly geniuses like Xia and Gong Sun Zi at the same time made countless people say that the Spirit Rune Pavilion would return to its former glory at their hands. Furthermore, just over a month ago, a matter shook the entire heavenly talisman starfield. The number of their heavenly talisman masters had gone from 5 to 6. The 6th was precisely the master of the Spirit Rune Pavilion, Gong Sun Xian. A heavenly talisman master was in existence that made countless people prostrate themselves in worship. The entire starfield was shaken by it at the time. The pavilion master had become a heavenly talisman master, and he had 2 people with limitless potential to carry on his inheritance. Just like that, the Spirit Rune Pavilion's rise was definitely set in stone. Countless sects sent congratulatory gifts, wanting to form a good relationship with them. However, the waves of Gong Sun Xian's promotion had yet to even settle before a bomb exploded. Xiachun actually snuck into the Spirit Rune Pavilion's sacred land, opening the heavenly talisman gate and taking the priceless treasure of the Spirit Rune Pavilion. After being discovered, he grabbed his fiancée as a hostage. But due to how major the implications were, even Gong Sun Zi's capture didn't dissuade others. When Xiachun was driven into a corner, he actually used a spiritual art to control the root of Gong Sun Zi's soul energy, placing a talisman there. It was an insidious talisman that would devour her spirit root, resulting in her never being able to cultivate again in this lifetime. Everyone was shocked and enraged by Xiachun's actions, and due to this, they opened a path for Xiachun to leave. Using Gong Sun Zi as a shield, just as he was about to escape, Gong Sun Xian appeared, saving Gong Sun Zi. But Xiachun still fled. Just as he fled, he was struck by Gong Sun Xian's talisman. The void was shattered at that time, leaving a giant hole that had yet to heal even until now. Everyone saw Xiachun transform into a streak of light and escape. Most likely, he had managed to block Gong Sun Xian's attack. However, that attack was Gong Sun Xian's strongest heaven-shaking talisman. Let alone a little divine lord like Xiachun, even a half-step divine venerate would lose half their life if struck by such a talisman. Afterward, Xiachun vanished. Some people estimated that he was already dead. After all, that was the heaven-shaking talisman, Gong Sun Xian's strongest talisman and his strongest trump card. Countless experts had lost their lives to it. Thus, people thought that Xiachun was definitely dead. However, some people did not agree. The heaven-shaking talisman was a yang talisman. At that time, people had seen Xiachun being covered in tens of thousands of black talismans. In the heavenly talisman starfield, there were countless talismans. However, in general, they could be classified as yin talismans, yang talismans, and yin-yang talismans. Yang talismans were made with white paper, yin talismans were made with black paper, and yin-yang talismans were made with colors other than black and white based on their character. The heaven-shaking divine talisman was a supreme yang talisman. However, Xiachun had summoned tens of thousands of yin talismans and detonated them at the same time. With the yin and yang forces pulling on each other, he had most likely managed to block a portion of the attack, while also unleashing a portion of its power into the void. At most, he had only endured a third of its power himself. Even though just a third of that talisman's power should be enough to kill any world king, people refused to believe that Xiachun didn't have other trump cards. Thus, some people felt that he was very likely still alive. Xiachun had actually done such a disgraceful thing, trespassing on their holy land. That was practically as bad as killing his own master. Gong Sun Xian was enraged and made a warrant for him. No matter where he was, he had to be found. If he was living, they wanted to capture him. If he was dead, they wanted to see his corpse. This matter didn't just shake the heavenly talisman starfield, but it also caused outsiders to come. The reward that the Spirit Rune Pavilion was offering was just that alluring. Thus, when Long Chun and Guoran asked about Xiachun, this person's first thought was that they also came for the reward. When this person was done with his story, Long Chun nodded. He directly tossed out 10,000 Immortal King crystals and turned to leave. Just then, that person suddenly said, "It seems that the two of you are Xiachun's friends. Then I'll add an additional piece of information. It is said that the Bloodkill Hall dispatched some terrifying experts because the Spirit Rune Pavilion requested their aid in hunting down Xiachun. Be careful. Bloodkill Hall? Terrifying experts?" Long Chun narrowed his eyes. "Boss, what do we do? Should we go to the Spirit Rune Pavilion and capture that damn pavilion master? We'll give him a beating and have him hand over Xiachun," said Guoran. "Can you please think before speaking? If the Spirit Rune Pavilion could find Xiachun, they wouldn't need to announce a warrant. That's what it means not to wash your dirty laundry in public. For them to do this, they clearly truly cannot find Xiachun and have to ask for aid from the entire Heavenly Talisman Starfield. What we need to do now is not seeking revenge. Is to find Xiachun. Furthermore, we must do it before the others find him. Most likely, he is seriously injured and is recuperating somewhere secret. He is in his most vulnerable state right now. We must find him first," said Long Chin gloomily. "But how are we supposed to find him? Is it any different from searching for a needle in a haystack?" said Guoran worriedly. Long Chun once again irritably said, "Please grow a brain. I really am bewildered by how you managed to become one of the 4 heavenly dragon heroes. On the Martial Heaven continent, didn't we have our own special way of staying in contact? Using dragon blood as the link, we created an instrument to find any of the dragon blood warriors who cultivated the dragon blood body tempering art. The compass will sense the dragon blood within a certain range. Xiaqin definitely wouldn't be as foolish as you. He definitely preserved his dragon blood all this time. Perhaps he even has a sensing compass to sense the other dragon blood warriors. If 2 people activate the compass at once, it can sense even further. We'll definitely have an easier time finding him than anyone else. Oh, I really am a pig. I forgot about this. Boss is wise. I'll make one right now." Guoran clapped his own head. In his worry, his head didn't work properly. This sensing compass had been developed by Guoran and Xiaqin back then. It was so that the dragon blood warriors could find each other if they were ever separated. However, they hadn't used it much in the mortal world. Who would have thought that they would find a use for it in the immortal world? When it came to the art of runes, Guoran was not an expert. But this kind of compass was easy considering he had made it before. He quickly made 2 compasses. "Boss, these are the best compasses I can make with the materials we have on hand. The sensing range should be beyond 300,000 miles. But the heavenly talisman star field is gigantic. It would take years to scan all of it. Where should we start?" asked Guoran. Long Chen shook his head. Being with this fellow caused his intelligence to fall. He couldn't even bother using his head now. Long Chun took out a map and pointed at a few markers. "Let's start from these areas. These are the areas with the highest likelihood of finding Xiaqin." Those markers were actually given to them by the fellow trying to peddle talismans to them. This was the calculations of the Spirit Rune Pavilion and the Heavenly Talisman Starfields experts. They had calculated the spatial fluctuations of that day, the remnant fluctuations of the heaven-shaking talisman's explosion, as well as how Xiaqin had transported himself. They then came up with several lines of space that Xiaqin might have gone through. No way, those areas have been flipped through many times. How could Xiaqin stay there? Asked Guoran. Fool! Do you not understand that it's darkest right beneath the light? The more dangerous the place, the safer it is. Xiaqin didn't have time to run anywhere far. If he tried, it would be even more dangerous. Rather than taking that risk, it would be better to stay in a chaotic land. The greater the chaos, the greater the holes. Furthermore, he is a talisman expert. He naturally knows how to conceal himself. The more muddied the waters, the better it conceals him. Alright, let's not waste time. There are 5 regions. You take the ones on the left, I'll take the ones on the right, and we'll converge at the center. Rather than going fast, make sure that you cover all the space that he could be. Don't leave any gaps. Long Chun drew a path on the map just in case Guoran was careless and didn't go through the entire area. Guoran took the map. He also took out a flying boat and used a brush to write a line of words boldly on it. I, Guoran, come to find Xiaqin. Those who block my path to riches will be treated like the murderers of my parents. Anyone who dares to block me will be killed. Long Chen smiled. This fellow did have some smarts when he wanted to think. Outsiders would probably think that he was crazy and wouldn't want to bother him. But if Xiaqin saw it, he would definitely show himself. Xiaqin and Guoran had been together the longest. These ugly characters of Guoran's would be instantly recognized as the real deal. Not bad. Let's go. Long Chun and Guoran parted ways, going to 2 separate areas. Long Chun also used a flying boat and wrote some characters on it. Dragonblood Legion. He had thought about just writing his own name, but he felt that this was being too brash. Supposedly, even the Bloodkill Hall's assassins had come. Although as long as it wasn't Imputa, he wasn't afraid at all. However, before finding Xiaqin, he didn't want to clash with anyone. Finding Xiaqin first was more important. When Long Chun arrived at the first area, he was dumbfounded. The number of flying boats in the sky made them seem like ravens. Those flying boats were emitting rays of divine light sweeping across the land. They made sure to go over every inch of this land. Damn! When Long Chun arrived, he just happened to see two flying boats attacking each other. He didn't know if they were fighting over an area to search or if something had happened, but in the end, the two flying boats smashed into each other, causing both flying boats to explode. Two wretched figures then came flying out of the wreckage. Both of them were in bad tempers. With a wave of their hands, one talisman after another came flying out. They were like flying blades spinning through the air. Those blades would then explode, occasionally causing a tempest, soaring flames, frost that covered everything, or golden light to erupt. This was Long Chen's first time seeing two talisman cultivators fighting. First, ignoring their actual fighting skill, it had to be said that a battle between talisman cultivators was very eye-catching. All of their moves were flashy and pretty. However, after watching for just a bit, Long Chen got bored. It seemed that neither of them was a true expert. They were just randomly tossing out talismans, competing over who had more. Furthermore, as their hands got to work, their mouths didn't slack off. They were constantly cursing each other. It seemed that they were intent on competing until one of their stocks was exhausted. Whoever ran first would be the loser. It seemed that they weren't competing in terms of power. Those talismans were all money. It was clearly a method of using money to crush the other side. These were two foolish sons of rich parents that were burning money to play around. Some other talisman cultivators watched them like watching monkeys perform. They occasionally even cheered for them. As a result, the two of them fought more energetically. Talismans were flung out as if they cost nothing at all. Long Chen shook his head. These two were clearly idiots, and he couldn't be bothered to keep watching. He continued onward. Just as he started on the path that he had decided, his compass began to violently shake. Found him! Long Chen's heart pounded wildly. The compass quickly pointed in one direction. However, after locking in that direction, the compass suddenly dimmed and became still. Long Chen quickly rushed off with his flying boat. All of a sudden, he saw countless figures rushing off in the same direction he was heading to. A sea of people was tightly surrounding one area. There was a giant spatial crack here. Right now, the spatial crack was slowly healing. But the earth was torn apart and a terrifying energy still hung in the air. It seemed that a large battle had just been fought here. As expected of the Bloodkill Hall's #1 genius, he found Xiachen so quickly. It's too bad. Xiachen still managed to get away. However, he coughed up blood just now from the injury. He probably didn't get far. He'll be found again quickly, and then all that awaits him is death. That Ji Wuying really is terrifying. We searched for so long without finding a single trace, but he found Xiachen as soon as he arrived. After all, that's an assassin. Their noses are sharper than dogs. It's nothing to be surprised about. When Long Chen arrived, he heard countless people talking about it. Hence, his expression sank and he directly squeezed his way through. Seeing this, some people were irritated by his brashness. They were about to start a fight. But when they saw Long Chen's gaze, they were so terrified that their curses were swallowed back into their stomachs. Passers-by, get out of here. Don't interfere with our Bloodkill Hall's matters. We are gathering specimens. When Long Chen reached the edge of the battlefield, there were several masked, cloaked people blocking him and anyone else from going any further. However, Long Chen ignored their warning and directly walked in. One of them glared at him and was about to attack when he saw Long Chen's face more clearly. At that moment, an expression of terror came across his face. You dash! That expert didn't even get to move before Long Chen slapped him in the face. His entire head exploded. Everyone was shocked. Those Bloodkill Hall experts were in the midst of gathering the bloodstains and investigating it for something, so they didn't expect someone to suddenly barge in and start killing. Long Chen didn't give them any chance to react at all. They were killed with one slap after another. In just a moment, the 4 Bloodkill Hall experts were all slain. The final one was in the midst of fading into the void when Long Chen dragged him out and killed him with a slap as well. Seeing this scene, everyone was terrified. As Ji Wuying's trusted aides, those assassins were experts amongst experts. But Long Chen slaughtered them effortlessly. If they didn't personally see it, they wouldn't believe it. In their eyes, Long Chun had slaughtered these experts without any effort at all. But in truth, every single one of his attacks contained immense profundities that they simply could not comprehend even after seeing it. After killing those 4, Long Chun ignored the others. He then touched the fresh blood on the ground. He was previously injured. Now this is injury on top of injury. Sensing the fluctuations coming from the blood, Long Chun circulated the dragon blood body tempering art. He quickly sensed the general direction of Xiaqin. Xiaqin had transported himself away, but due to his injury, the dragon blood aura remained in the air. From it, Long Chun was able to see some clues. Ji Wuying was already chasing after Xiaqin, but his efficiency should be much lower than Long Chun's. That was why his subordinates were gathering samples here. It was in case he failed to follow the tracks. Long Chun then put away the flying boat. It was too slow. No longer caring about exposing his status, he rushed off like a bolt of lightning. Who was that? How is he so terrifying? It was only once Long Chun left that people started reacting. Heavens! Isn't he that madman who's been plundering the Soaring Dragon Company? In the chaotic Star Sea, he slaughtered countless heavenly geniuses. I heard he even defeated Yen Su's son. He is the youngest dean in the history of the number 1 Academy of the 9 Heavens and 10 Lands. Long Chun. Some people recognized Long Chun's adornment, but they weren't too sure. In the chaotic Star Sea, Long Chun had killed an unknown number of heavenly geniuses from various races, along with Yen Su's son. Hence, his name had long since spread throughout the large domains. However, the violet flame heaven was gigantic, so information couldn't spread that rapidly. After all, the experts of the various regions were more familiar with their homes and the laws of the heavenly Daos there. They had no need to run around with the human race. As for the human race, they weren't too friendly with each other anyway. The main reason Long Chun's name could reach this place was because of the Soaring Dragon Company. In all the history of the Soaring Dragon Company, he was definitely the first to dare to so openly plunder their treasuries. Of course, after people recognized him, some of them immediately alerted the Soaring Dragon Company in hopes of obtaining a reward. At this moment, Long Chun had found Xiaqin's tracks, so he no longer cared if others recognized him. His goal was to find Xiaqin as quickly as possible. As space quivered, Long Chun appeared atop a large mountain. It had just crumbled, and there was dust everywhere. Xiaqin had just been transported here. As for Ji Wuying, he had chased Xiaqin down here. But based on the scars, Xiaqin hadn't stayed behind. He had undergone a second transportation. Long Chun continued following the aura. This Ji Wuying was truly terrifying. Even without a compass, even without being able to sense dragon blood, he was relying on some unknown ability to track Xiaqin. Long Chun chased him down as quickly as he could, while also actively throwing out the compass's fluctuations in hopes of Xiaqin sensing it. Finally, on the 4th transportation, Long Chun's compass reacted. Long Chun was delighted. Xiaqin had finally sensed his compass. At this moment, Long Chun stopped moving. Standing atop the peak of a mountain, he calmly waited. If Xiaqin had noticed him, then there was no need for him to continue chasing. Xiaqin would naturally transport to him. If they both started running to each other, they would just end up switching locations, and their senses would be thrown into disarray. They might not even be able to find each other. Long Chun's compass grew brighter and brighter. Xiaqin was getting closer and closer. Boom! Suddenly, the void quivered and a blood-soaked figure came out. It was Xiaqin. When Xiaqin saw Long Chun, his eyes immediately reddened. Boss! Xiaqin was choked with sobs. He was thin and haggard, and there was an unmistakable weariness and pain in his eyes that aggrieved Long Chun. Good brother, everything is in the past. Long Chun emotionally hugged Xiaqin. He then took out a healing pill for him. Boom! Xiaqin had just consumed it when the void once more exploded. At this moment, a sword pierced toward Xiaqin. Xiaqin, you won't get away. That voice was icy, like a specter from hell. Likewise, I don't know if you'll be able to get away. Killing intent exploded out of Long Chun. The Minghong saber came flying out of its sheath, and a powerful mental energy instantly locked onto that person. Long Chen's saber contained his full heart and spirit, and it completely locked onto that person, not letting him get away. Boom! Two divine weapons clashed together, resulting in an explosion of sparks. When that happened, the world was like a mirror that was struck. Cracks instantly spread throughout the void. Spatial energy? Long Chen was startled. At this moment, his saber's power was released into the void by a strange energy. Due to how long he had known Bai Shaola, he was familiar with spatial energy. Seeing this, he instantly had a bad feeling. Without hesitation, Long Chen slashed his saber behind him. Boom! Another explosion caused cracks to appear in the void. Long Chen repeatedly slashed his saber 16 times. Other than the first one when he took the initiative to attack, the rest were all him being forced to passively defend. The attacker was as quick as lightning, and his movements were like that of a phantom. Long Chen couldn't even grasp them. Furthermore, the attacker's target was always Xia Chun, who was behind him. That enraged Long Chen. This person actually dared to ignore him and focus on killing Xia Chun when he was right there. Long Chen, is it? You're quite famous. But is this all your power? If I, Ji Wuing, wish to kill someone, then not even 10 of you would be enough to stop me. That person sneered, and his sword continued to dance in the air, aiming for Xia Chun. Even Enputa doesn't dare to say such big words in front of me. Who do you think you are? Do you think having a supreme bone is so amazing? Long Chen snorted. After his battle with All Devil Tianai, he was more familiar with supreme bones. Thus, he could sense the aura of a supreme bone on Ji Wuing's body. Furthermore, this person was capable of activating spatial energy without hand seals, incantations, or even using his spiritual strength. It was directly unleashed. That meant that his spatial energy was not something he latently cultivated but a kind of innate divine ability. It was somewhat similar to Bai Shaola's 3 flower pupils. However, even when it came to the 3 flower pupils, the body, mouth, and will still had to work together to use spatial power. On the other hand, this person's spatial power was unleashed all on its own. That made Long Chen guess that it was the natural spatial energy of this person's supreme bone. Split the heavens one. Violet Qi burst out of the Minghong saber, and it slashed through the air. The sharp killing intent locked onto Ji Wuing once again. Boom! Cracks once more appeared in the void. However, it was different from before. Previously, Long Chen's energy was all blocked by spatial energy. But this time, a violet saber image continued through the spatial cracks to strike Ji Wuing. Ji Wuing was forced back 3 steps. On the 3rd step, the ground beneath his feet exploded, and it was caused by a golden talisman that had appeared there. The golden talisman's explosion made Ji Wuing grunt in pain. His lower legs were turned into pulp. That talisman was placed by Xia Chun. Even Long Chen didn't know how he had sent the talisman there. The timing and location were so perfect that even Ji Wuing was struck by it. All of a sudden, the void exploded and a black armored figure came flying out. His black saber slashed down on Ji Wuing with all his power. Guoran had arrived. After receiving a message from Long Chen, Guoran immediately rushed over. Long Chen chased Xia Chun while Guoran chased Long Chen, resulting in him arriving now. Without hesitation, he unleashed his strongest attack. Split the heavens too. Ji Wuing had just been knocked back by Long Chen and injured by Xia Chun. Hence, now that Guoran's attack came, he didn't even have time to think and could only block hastily. As a result, Guoran's blow sent him flying. Without a chance to unleash his spatial energy, he was blown far into the distance. After that, Xia Chun took out dozens of talismans. With a wave of his hand, those talismans covered heaven and earth. Humph, interesting. To be able to injure me, although you used numbers, I have to say that you have some ability. But if you want to trap me, you must be dreaming. Next time, I will take your life. Ji Wuing's figure suddenly vanished into the void. It was then that Xia Chen's talismans unleashed a barrier of light. He had been trying to keep Ji Wuing trapped here, but he was one step too late. Fuck, he got away. That's too bad. But who cares? We'll kill him next time. Brother Xiachen, I really missed you. Without you, I feel like the entire world is black and white. I can't see a trace of color. Guoran was a bit displeased that Ji Wuying escaped, but seeing Xiachen again made him forget about that. Guoran immediately walked over and gave Xiachen a fierce hug. Yes, these days without you really have been hard. Us brothers can't be parted. Now we can collaborate once more. Xiachen embraced Guoran tightly. The two of them began weeping without being aware of it. Guoran and Xiachen were perfect partners. After so many years of collaboration, they could practically communicate without words. A simple gaze was enough to convey what they were thinking to each other. Hence, the two of them only needed a glance to know that both of them had suffered during this time. They couldn't even say anything and simply wept. It was only after a while that the two of them calmed down. Xiachen then activated a transportation talisman, sending the three of them into a secluded mountain range. This place was also not safe. According to Xiachen, his enemies would manage to track them down in at most 6 hours. Longchen felt that 6 hours was enough. He then checked Xiachen's body and found that his outer wounds were nothing. The main concern was the injury to his soul. In order to block Gongsun Xian's attack back then, he had paid a terrifying price. Because of it, he had yet to recover. After giving Xiachen several medicinal pills, Longchen used his own spiritual strength to help him recover. Although Longchen wasn't a talisman cultivator and didn't purely raise his soul energy, his spiritual strength was incomparably powerful. With the aid of his spiritual strength, Xiachen's soul energy would quickly recover as well. In just 4 hours, Xiachen's soul energy recovered to around 80%, and his outer injury was also healed. Only then did Longchen ask Xiachen about the situation. When this matter was raised, Xiachen was first silent for a moment before flames of fury filled his eyes. I, Xiachen, have never hated someone so much in this lifetime. Boss, I will definitely kill Gongsun Xian and that bitch. When Xiachen ascended from the martial heaven continent, he arrived in the heavenly talisman starfield. He then directly aimed for the spirit rune pavilion due to its reputation. Just like Guoran, he was rejected. He didn't have enough power, nor did he have the money to pay to take the test. That was ignoring all the money he needed for his future cultivation. Moreover, Xiachen wasn't as fortunate as Guoran. No one came to help him. In order to stay in the Spirit Rune Pavilion, Xiachen had to register as a regular worker first. He started off just playing second fiddle to those talisman apprentices, secretly studying as he worked. The talismans and runes that he started off with were made with pieces of trash material that he gathered over time. They were essentially scrap. In that environment, Xiachen steadily learned things bit by bit, accumulating power. Finally, as a worker, he had the chance to butt in a trial for disciples, managing to draw the attention of an instructor. Xiachen chose to interrupt during a certain question that had befuddled that instructor for a long time. After that, Xiachen's words ended up enlightening the instructor, instantly causing him to favor Xiachen. That instructor was someone that Xiachen had had an eye on for a long time. His character wasn't bad. That was why Xiachen had taken this chance to show off when the chance came. That instructor then showed favor to Xiachen, paying for him and using his own connections to set up a test for Xiachen to become a talisman apprentice. As a result, Xiachen passed with full marks, astonishing everyone. After that, Xiachen was like a soaring phoenix. As he constantly learned more, his terrifying talent was gradually displayed. The entire Spirit Rune Pavilion began to take note of him. When he passed the trial to become a talisman master, his fame was even more resounding. As for the trial for Talisman Grandmaster, although he failed, he still shook the entire Heavenly Talisman Starfield. The Heavenly Talisman Starfield might not see such a genius talisman cultivator in tens of thousands of years. At that time, Xiachen became the most brilliant star, and countless talisman cultivators worshipped him. Wherever he went, he was followed by fawning people, and there were countless beauties around him. He was always the brightest star in any event. What moved Xiachen the most was that he not only gained the favor of the pavilion master, Gongsun Xian, but he also gained the favor of the Spirit Rune Pavilion's #1 beauty. Gongsun Zi was famous for being an ice beauty and not being moved by any man. Only Xia Chun could win her favor, and they even had a marriage agreement. At that moment, Xia Chun would say that he had reached the pinnacle of his life. He had a beauty to accompany him all day, and the Spirit Rune Pavilion's tomes were all available for him to peruse. They didn't hold anything back. Xia Chun then grew more and more familiar with talismans and runes. His perseverance was almost maniacal. It seemed that he had grown to love this work more than his own life. After that, practically the entire Heavenly Talisman Starfield's tomes were at his disposal. He studied all kinds of runes, and the pavilion's elders even discussed the evolution of various runes with him. He then ended up inferring runes of the ancient era and writing plenty of his thoughts on the subject. It could be said that he had made huge contributions to the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Brother, you were so skilled that you could interpret the ancient era's talismans, causing the Spirit Rune Pavilion to soar once more. You have limitless potential. Is the Gongsun family crazy? Why would they try to destroy you? Guoran couldn't help asking. Xiaqin bitterly smiled. That was my first thought too. I was completely loyal to the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Countless headhunters secretly tried to buy me, but I rejected them all. It wasn't because the pavilion master had so much trust in me or because Gongsun Zi treated me so well. I simply felt that after learning all my skills from the Spirit Rune Pavilion, this place was my home, and I couldn't do anything that would be a betrayal of my home. But I didn't expect that while my heart was clear and bright, they were actually using me. At first, they only eyed my talent with runes, but then their target turned to my soul energy seed and my body. At that time, I fell for a trap that they set up. Gongsun Zi tried to take my soul energy seed, while Gongsun Xian wanted to take over my body. That grandfather and granddaughter are animals. A vein throbbed on Xia Chen's forehead when he explained this. Killing intent filled his eyes. He had always shown loyalty to the Spirit Rune Pavilion, but why would the Spirit Rune Pavilion bear malice toward him? He had never expected that this one matter would completely change their thinking. There was a restricted area in the Spirit Rune Pavilion called the Spirit Rune Sacred Land. It was actually a palace where the Spirit Rune Pavilion's most ancient inheritance was locked. It was said to contain the true foundation of the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Inside was a record of the most profound talismans of ancient times. However, since no one could crack the runes on the gate, the inheritance had remained locked inside for tens of thousands of years. No one knew what was really there. It went without saying that Xia Chun was a genius. In just over a month, through repeated calculations and deductions, he finally opened this gate that had been locked for countless years. What he hadn't expected was that by opening this gate, he also opened the path to his own demise. Just as he was cheering over his success, a poisonous dagger stabbed him through the back. He would never forget Gongsun Zi's cold sneer when he turned back. That smile was full of disdain and the pity of someone who thought of themselves as far, far above him. Meanwhile, Gongsun Xian just watched from the side. He was like a wily old fox with everything in his control. What was in his eyes was not pity. It was greed. Perhaps it was due to her pity, but Gongsun Zi told Xia Chun the reason for this. Even Xia Chun was unaware that his soul energy was actually so pure that it had mutated. With the right conditions, it was possible to produce a mutated spirit root, and it could be considered a talisman element spirit root. A mutated spirit root was just as precious as a supreme bone. Also, Xia Chen's cultivation base was at the late Divine Lord realm, the optimal time to take a mutated spirit root. If Xia Chun advanced and became an immortal king, the spirit root would awaken and remember his body. At that time, taking it would be very difficult. Even if they did, it would be difficult to get it to form a connection with someone else. It had taken a great deal of consideration for them to do this to Xiaqin. His talent was so great that he had helped the Spirit Rune Pavilion progress rapidly. But a mutated spirit root was even more attractive than his talent. Gongsun Xian was also eyeing Xiaqin's body. Xiaqin's talent with runes was astonishing, so his body would have memories of that talent. For that purpose, Gongsun Xian was planning on taking over his body. Since that was the case, The two of them chose to make their move just as Xia Chun opened the gate to this sacred land. With the gate open, they felt that Xia Chun wasn't too useful any longer, and so they went to take everything that he had. However, they hadn't expected Xia Chun, who was exhausted at that time, to have studied an ancient death substitution talisman. He had stuck one to himself as soon as he learned how to make them. He hadn't even had an opportunity to tell them about his success in this research before they attacked him. Luckily, it wasn't time for Xia Chun to die yet. Just as they were about to kill him, he activated the death substitution talisman and escaped. Fuck! How hateful! Repaying kindness with enmity. They are worse than animals. Guoran clenched his teeth furiously, wanting to directly charge over and kill the two of them right now. Guoran was even angrier than Xia Chun. Although he had also been bullied in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Armor College, that was simply because the cultivation world was like that. There were too many wolves and not enough meat to go around. With a limited amount of resources, if you wanted them, you had to fight for them. However, the pavilion master Gongsun Xian had schemed against Xia Chun with his granddaughter, harming someone who had shown favor to the Spirit Rune Pavilion. It was absolutely vile. The most unacceptable thing was that they actually used love to trick Xia Chun. The pain from such a betrayal was unbearable. Let's go. We're almost out of time and we need to switch locations. I don't know what that wily old fox did to me, but he keeps being able to find my general location, said Xia Chun. All these days of running had made Xia Chun realize that the other side was able to slowly determine his location. He didn't know if it was due to him cultivating the Spirit Rune Pavilion's secret arts or something else. We're not leaving. We'll kill anyone who comes, said Guoran hatefully. Killing them is meaningless. They're just cannon fodder that the Spirit Rune Pavilion is using to disturb me. There's no need to waste time on them, said Xia Chun. Long Chen nodded. Xia Chun is correct. There is no need to waste time on them. Ji Wuying ended up running. But next time he will definitely strike like lightning. I'm not afraid of him, but I am worried about you too. He possesses a supreme bone and is a natural controller of spatial energy. Adding on his status as an assassin, we cannot be careless. Xia Chun has yet to recover, while Guoran, don't you also have something important you need to study with Xia Chun? That's right. Guoran slapped his leg and jumped up excitedly. The three of them went through several more transportations. In a new location, Guoran proudly took out a black arm bone and showed it to Xia Chun. When Xia Chun saw the runes on the black bone, he almost jumped. These are runes born of heaven and earth. How can they appear on a person's body? Hehe. This is a supreme bone. Supreme heavenly geniuses are all bestowed with gifts from heaven and earth. They naturally aren't ordinary. However, this gift was taken by me. Xia Chun, you're skilled with runes. Can you see how to link this thing with my body? I've already nourished it for a while, and my mental mark has appeared on it. You have a way, right? Guoran looked at Xia Chun excitedly. The current Guoran was like a child who couldn't wait any longer. It was like he was afraid of Xia Chun saying that he didn't have a solution. Moreover, his tense expression looked like he was waiting for a sentencing. Whether he would be executed or live was up to Xia Chun's next words. Xia Chun lightly touched the black bone. He still had a shocked expression, which gradually grew grave. Never had he ever come into contact with this kind of rune. He then spent an hour just examining it, with sweat dripping down his forehead. Guoran was also sweating. Xia Chun stared at the black bone, while Guoran stared at him. Neither of them blinked. Beautiful. A masterpiece of the heavenly Taos. It is truly amazing. Xia Chun finally sighed in amazement. What? Don't get so shocked. Can I use the bone or not? Asked Guoran urgently. Yes, you can. But you will probably have to pay quite the price. The first thing to do is to cut off your own arm and then plant the runes of the black bone on your skeleton. That way, the bone will form an attachment to you. However, this attachment can't be completed in just one step. There are many processes that you must go through, and every process will be very painful. The pain will definitely not be inferior to when Boss trained us in the dragon blood body tempering art. You have to be mentally prepared. Furthermore, the source of this black bone's power lies in the bloodline. You have boss's dragon blood energy, so you can use it. But due to its own original source being different, it will need to gradually get accustomed to the dragon blood energy. The start of that process will also be painful, and that pain will only stop when both powers fully merge. You have to think this through. Once you start, you can't go back, warned Xiachen gravely. What are you talking about? When have I, Guoran, ever been afraid of pain? If you want to show off, you have to pay a price. Even Boss said that if you want to stand above others, you have to sacrifice more than them. However much I pay now is how much higher I'll stand above others. Haha, when I wear my battle armor in the future, I'll have the supreme bone inside, and I'll be able to look down on everyone. Come, brother, go ahead and start. Don't talk about those meaningless things. If you say too much, I'll lose my confidence. Guoran clenched his teeth and stuck out his right arm. It's not time yet. I'll need to replicate the bone's runes and plant them in your body first. That will increase the familiarity between you two. Otherwise, this bone will simply destroy your skeleton, said Xiachen. After saying that, Xiachen got to work. Taking out a refined desk and inscribing brush, as well as hundreds of different powders of different colors, he got to work. The first thing he did was mix the powders into liquid. The curious thing was that when these different colored powders were mixed, they turned black. Moreover, the liquid came to possess the same aura as the bone. Seeing this, Longchen was amazed. This was also a grand Dao, just like the pill Dao. When raised to the pinnacle, there was no differentiating which was greater. Xiachen first copied the runes on the bone, and his copies were perfect duplicates. Only then did he start drawing on talisman paper. A single talisman had to go through hundreds of copies and then hundreds of tests. Also, repeatedly detonating them to test their power was the only way to confirm if they could be used or not. When Xiachen detonated a talisman the size of a fingernail, it left a giant ripple in the air. That power was equivalent to a full power attack from a late-stage world king. Seeing this scene, Guoran jumped in terror. Just this single rune was already so terrifying. If it was stuck onto his bones, would he still have his life? But having said some big words, he couldn't take them back. Guoran directly stopped watching and ran off, saying that he was going to guard them, when in reality he was afraid that if he kept watching, he wouldn't have the courage to take in the black bone. Time passed bit by bit. The three of them constantly moved around, and 3 days quickly passed. During these 3 days, Xiachen had drawn over 3,600 talismans before he finally finished. Guoran, come over, called Xiachen. Guoran was pale, but after taking a deep breath, he stuck out his right arm. Without a word, Xiachen cut off his arm, and Guoran clenched his teeth in pain. Xiachen then waved his other hand. 3,600 fingernail-sized talismans spread out to cover Guoran's body. Ah! Guoran let out a scream. Those talismans were like worms burrowing into his flesh and attaching to his bones. Boss, start, said Xiachen, holding the bone. Longchen nodded and pressed a hand on Guoran's back. At that time, Xiachen placed the bone on Guoran's shoulder. Boom! When the arm bone met Guoran's bone, a powerful explosion rang out along with the sound of bones shattering. Guoran instantly fainted. Ah! Guoran had just fainted when he instantly woke up from the pain. He felt like every bone in his body was shattering and repairing. His soul was also in immense pain, as if it was being torn apart. I can't do this, Guoran screamed, his eyes almost popping out from the pain. There's no turning back now. Xiachen shook his head. Ignoring Guoran's screams, he continued controlling the talismans, having the runes within Guoran's body form a connection with the runes on the arm. I'm going to die. I'm really going to die, screamed Guoran. His eyes were open, but he couldn't see anything. No matter how he screamed, Longchen and Xiachen ignored him. With Guoran's current physical body, there was no way he would die. What kind of joke was that? Longchen had split a portion of his true dragon essence blood with him. His physical body had reached a terrifying level. Right now, Guoran was in the midst of switching out his skeleton. Although the power of his blood and flesh was strong, his skeleton was weaker. The injection of the dragon blood didn't strengthen his bones enough. Hence, if Goran wanted this arm, he had to make his skeleton reach a level that could control it. Right now, Xiachun was helping Goran absorb the Supreme Bone's power so that he could strengthen his whole skeleton. Just a single arm was useless. If he were to fight someone in that condition, in the first exchange, his Supreme Bone would fly off and every other bone in his body would explode. Goran's bones were constantly shattering and being reborn. Long Chen's life energy was helping him recover. Goran couldn't die, but he would wish he was dead. Who told him to choose this path? Since he had already chosen it, there was no going back. Goran was constantly screaming like a pig being slaughtered. It was unknown how many times he had fainted from the pain just to wake up from the pain again. In the end, he fully fainted and fell silent. As for Long Chen and Xiachun, they were covered in sweat. The Supreme Bone was finally connected to Goran's skeleton. His bones had broken and recovered hundreds of thousands of times before finally being able to match this Supreme Bone. This Supreme Bone was actually rather long and not quite the same shape as the human race's arm. But after merging, it grew to the same size and shape as Goran's original arm. Also, flesh started to grow on the bone. On the surface, it looked like a normal arm. However, there were countless runes flowing within this arm. It was currently adapting to its new body, constantly changing its new home. Because of it, Goran's physical body was steadily growing stronger. Boss, this Supreme Bone has a heavy evil air. I'm worried that in the future, said Xiachun. It's fine. Every person has a dark side. Although Goran likes to show off, his inner heart is kind. He won't be affected by this little bit of darkness. After all, this Supreme Bone was never fully awoken. It has a great deal of plasticity, and it won't affect Goran's inner heart. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let him keep it back then, said Long Chen. Hearing that, Xiachun relaxed about this matter. When looking at the slumbering Goran, he enviously said, "This fellow is so lazy, but now that he has a Supreme Bone, not even the heavens can contain him." With this Supreme Bone, Goran would definitely be strutting around all day. A Supreme Bone was an unrivaled existence, and with the addition of his battle armor, there was simply no way to estimate Goran's combat power. Furthermore, a Supreme Bone's true power would only truly manifest in the Immortal King realm. Once this fellow became an Immortal King, he would definitely soar. 7 days later, Goran finally woke up, and when he saw his arm, he immediately grabbed it and felt it. Sensing the endless power within it, he almost didn't believe it himself. After that, he let out a simple punch in the air. A heaven-shaking explosion caused a mountain far off in the distance to crumble, and the ear-piercing sound didn't fade for a long time. "Boss, Xiachun, punch me. Am I dreaming?" shouted Goran. Long Chen immediately kicked him. This kick was actually filled with such power that Xiachun jumped in shock. Goran then cried out as he was sent flying. He tumbled back like a shooting star, crashing through multiple mountains. He then vanished beyond the horizon, leaving only a line of dust. It was unknown just how far he was going. "Boss, that was a bit vicious." Xiachun was gobsmacked. That kick was vicious. Was Long Chen not afraid of Goran dying? It had to be known that Goran didn't have any defenses up at all. Just then, Goran came flying back in his Devil Dragon battle armor. "Ha ha ha!" Goran took off his armor and laughed. That powerful kick didn't cause any damage at all. Even though he hadn't been on guard, the Supreme Bone had automatically helped him block the majority of the impact. Other than that, even while smashing through those mountains, he wasn't injured at all. "I, Goran, am unrivaled. Ha ha ha." Goran raised his right arm. Right now, even he didn't know just how much stronger he was. Thus, he had the urge to find a peak expert to fight with right now. Your arm is still getting used to you, so there's a great deal of room for improvement. You should communicate with it more and learn how to control its power. Also, there are many runes on the arm that I couldn't understand. You'll need to study them yourself. "Ah, your luck really is enviable," said Xiachun with a smile. Although Xiachun said that he was envious, he had a gratified smile. If Goran got stronger, that made Xiachun even happier than if he himself got stronger. "Hee hee. Don't worry, I'll definitely study this. Just who am I? I am Guoran, the general of the Dragonblood Legion, a possessor of a supreme bone. Starting today, I will turn a new leaf, declared Guoran proudly. He was almost incoherent. I wonder who was screaming for their parents just now, saying that he would die and wanted to give up? Xiachun curled his lips. Brother, are you my brother? If you're my brother, then you should cheer me on, not drag me down, said Guoran. Just thinking about his appearance before this made him feel embarrassed. All right, don't mess around. Guoran, you've just merged with the Supreme Bone. But since our time is rather limited, I'll give you 3 days to get used to your new arm and power, said Long Chun. During the next 3 days, Long Chun personally trained Guoran, having him get used to his new power. As for Xiachun, he took this opportunity to restore his power to its peak. 3 days were quickly over. Now Xiachun was at full power, and a sharp light was contained within his eyes. He had regained his old confidence. As for Guoran, his confidence was completely inflated. With Long Chen's training, he had reached an initial level of control over his supreme bone. Even without his battle armor, he was able to fight Long Chun evenly. Could be said that Guoran's combat power had instantly soared dozens of times. If it wasn't a fight to the death, even Long Chun wouldn't dare to say that he could defeat the current Guoran. The power of a supreme bone was truly monstrous. Once their preparations were complete, the three of them returned to their original location, their killing intent soaring. Their goal was to wipe away all their grudges. The Heavenly Talisman Starfield's Hidden Dragon Prefecture was a sea domain, and millions of islands were scattered about like stars in the sky there. The water was calm, with dense immortal chi and mist that covered the sea in a mysterious haze. The smaller islands were around 100 miles long, while the bigger ones were millions and millions of miles wide. They were almost the same size as the Heavenly Swell domain. This sea domain was called the Hidden Dragon Prefecture. The legend was that in the Desolate Era it was a dragon pool. In other words, a place where dragons roamed. There was once a dragon nest beneath the islands, and in the Desolate Era, the dragon race occupied this territory. Later on, the dragon race disappeared and the human race became the master of this region. The human race and the dragon race were comparatively closer compared to the devil race, so the human race easily adapted to this place. In the Hidden Dragon Prefecture, they would carry out a major ceremony every year, offering sacrifices to the dragon race's heroic spirits for their blessing. It was said that Hidden Dragon Prefecture was protected by the dragon race's ancestral soul. As long as this ceremony didn't cease, the ancestral soul would not fade away. It could continue to protect the human race generation after generation. No one had seen the dragon soul before, but one thing was a fact. Hidden Dragon Prefecture had never been attacked by any devil beasts or sea demons. It was unknown if it was due to the dragon soul or because this was the ancestral land of the dragon race, causing some lingering dragon might to drive them away. In any case, this was a comparatively peaceful land. It was precisely due to this that Hidden Dragon Prefecture's biggest island was even larger than an average domain. Countless cultivators gathered here. Hidden Dragon Prefecture had one island in particular that was called Hidden Dragon Island. In terms of surface area, it could only rank number 3, but it was the island with the most flourishing populace. This was where the spiritual chi of the Heavenly Talisman Starfield was densest. The island was covered in cities and sects and had too many cultivators to count. The Spirit Rune Pavilion was located in the northwest region of Hidden Dragon Island. At this moment, countless people were coming and going through the gates of the Spirit Rune Pavilion. It was a day of celebration. Today was the formal award ceremony for Gongsun Xian becoming a Heavenly Talisman Master. This was a major affair for the entire Heavenly Talisman Starfield. According to the rules, a month after announcing it to the world, a good day would be chosen to carry out the award ceremony. That was because a Heavenly Talisman Master was capable of solving an ancient talisman and creating their own talisman. That was a major progression for the entire world of talismans and runes. A Heavenly Talisman Master was both a symbol of status and power, as well as a kind of responsibility. The other matter was that Gongsun Xian's granddaughter, Gongsun Zi, was marrying the Blood Kill Hall's #1 heavenly genius, Ji Wuing. That news was very unexpected. Just what was going on? Just as she was going to marry Xia, she suddenly chose to marry someone else? Even if Xia had betrayed the Spirit Rune Pavilion and broken things off with her, could she walk out of that shadow so quickly? Xia hadn't even been found yet. So just what were they doing? While people didn't understand, they pretended as if there was nothing strange about it and came to congratulate them. When it came to this matter, understanding didn't matter. Their only goal was to form a good relationship with the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Thus, they could simply act as if they had heard nothing about this. However, there was this one rumor. Since they were unable to capture Xia, perhaps Gongsun Xian was using Gongsun Zi's marriage as an attempt to lure him out. That was a loathsome method, filled with a despicable flavor. But the main thing was, would Xia really fall for such a thing? Anyone with a brain wouldn't fall for such a thing. They had obviously set up a trap just for him. However, lately people had been hearing another name. It was the High Firmament Academy's youngest dean, the one who had repeatedly plundered the Soaring Dragon Company, the one who had slain countless lifeforms in the chaotic Star Sea, and the one who had killed Yen Su's son. He was the vicious man known as Long Chun. Although they didn't know much about Long Chun, they had all heard of these matters. The rumors said that he was a crazy man who dared to do anything. Xia might be able to endure, but it was different now that Long Chun had arrived. So many people had come to congratulate the Spirit Rune Pavilion. But to be honest, they also wanted to see if this person known as Long Chun would dare to show up. Congratulations! Congratulations! At the front of the palace was a group of elders. The leaders were the 5 heavenly talisman masters of this starfield. Haha! It's all thanks to standing on the shoulders of seniors. We are all making small improvements compared to the blessings that our ancestors gave us. Of course, the pointers from U5 were also part of it. Come in. A tall and rather pudgy elder smiled and courteously invited them in. This was the pavilion master, Gongsun Xian. His eyes were small, making it seem like his eyes were squeezed shut all the time, as if he was always smiling. However, his smile was rather fake just for the public to see. As he greeted his guests, he also eyed the surroundings. Music began to play at this time. After that, a woman with a phoenix crown and red cape walked in with a black-robed man. He was the Blood Kill Hall's #1 genius, Ji Wuing. He currently had a light smile and gazed in a certain direction. A sinister light also appeared in his eyes. The void he was looking at rumbled, and a ray of light shot over from the distance. Because of the commotion, everyone was startled and hastily looked over. Xia, he really came. They saw 3 figures. The people didn't recognize the other 2, but they instantly recognized Xia. Dear fiancé, for your marriage, I don't bring much, but I hope you won't mind this little gift. Xia was glaring at the dressed-up Gongsun Zi. Flames almost burst out of his eyes. He then waved his hand, causing 3 coffins to fall in front of the palace. Everyone was shocked. To send coffins during a wedding, it seemed that there would be no end until death. Gongsun Zi slowly raised her veil, revealing a beautiful face. But despite being beautiful, her slightly high nose and thin lips did not give off a friendly feeling. Looking at her face, Long Chun only saw a woman who would use any means necessary for her goals. A woman who was so selfish that she could only ever love herself. Long Chun couldn't help sighing inside. Xia, this fool, was completely immersed in runes, talismans, and formations. He had astounding talent in this regard, and yet his eyes couldn't see people clearly. He was actually tricked by such a woman. The 3 of them had just arrived when the grand formation was activated. Now, the entire Spirit Rune Pavilion was covered in a barrier, and all the guests were locked inside. Xia, I really admire you. How meticulous. There are 3 of you and you brought 3 coffins. Not too few and not too many. Are you hoping that I will leave you an intact corpse? Sneered Gongsun Zi. That sneer didn't contain the slightest emotion. No. These 3 coffins are for your family. Guoran shouted and his voice suddenly changed, becoming a thunderous roar. Anyone who doesn't want to die should back up. Today, us three brothers are starting a slaughter. Of the experts present, there were at least 9 half-step divine venerates. As for world kings, there were too many to count. Moreover, those who could come here were all major figures of the various powerful sections. So, when they heard Guarant's warning, they were startled and then laughed. You're clearly tortoises caught in a jar. Yet you dare to say such big words. Youngsters really are interesting these days, said one elder mockingly. You! Guaran was enraged and was about to kill him when Long Chan held him back. Leave it. Kindness cannot advise ghosts about to die. Let them do what they want. If a person wants to die, no one can stop them. Long Chen shook his head. Guaran had given them their warning. That was their chance. Whether or not they would grasp it was up to themselves. However, while these people had mocking expressions, they didn't have any intention of fighting. After all, this was a matter for the Spirit Rune Pavilion. They were only in charge of watching the show. When Long Chen's group of 3 appeared, the Spirit Rune Pavilion's grand formation was activated. Divine light continued to circulate, causing the pressure to grow increasingly powerful. But Long Chen's group didn't even seem to see the formation. Guarant's killing intent fully erupted. He was just waiting for Xia Chen's order to slaughter people. When Xia Chen looked at the sneering Gong Sun Zi, his body quivered slightly. The rage in his eyes ignited. Gong Sun Zi, Xia Chen was truly blind. I was actually tricked by you. I was fully devoted to you, and I trusted you. But both you and your grandfather wanted to steal my soul seed and my body. Today, I will settle all our debts. Even Xia Chen's voice was quivering. He himself hadn't experienced that much. Ever since he had started following Long Chen, he had always been with his hot-blooded brothers in the Dragon Blood Legion. He trusted every single one of them with his life, and they did the same with him. He had always thought that as long as he treated others sincerely, they would treat him the same. But he was wrong this time. His sincerity only brought him pain and anger. Xia Chen wasn't afraid of bleeding or danger, but this kind of betrayal and deceit was unacceptable, especially with how they had used his feelings. Gong Sun Zi smiled indifferently. Xia Chen, even at this moment you're still acting like a victim? Do you think there's a point? Who would believe the words of a traitor who betrayed their sect and master? Don't waste the effort. Having committed such sins, even I cannot save you. If you have any sense of responsibility, just kill yourself. My time is very precious. As you can see, I have something very important to do today. Gong Sun Zi then held Ji Wuying's arm tighter, looking at Xia Chen provokingly. Gong Sun Xian sighed. Xia Chen, you've really disappointed me. I was originally planning on dash. Shut your mouth, you old shameless thing. You took the ancient talisman that I deciphered and the new talisman that I came up with to apply for your heavenly talisman master status. You thieving liar, you aren't qualified to speak with me? Shouted Xia Chen. Everyone was startled by those words, and they looked at Gong Sun Xian in disbelief. However, Gong Sun Xian's expression was still completely calm. He shook his head. Xia Chen, why bother? Before dying, do you simply have to damage my reputation first? I really don't understand why you would do this. I treated you like family, and my position was going to be yours. Just who made you do this? Tell me. If you have your own circumstances, then even if I have to bend the rules or give up my position as pavilion master, I will try to save your life. Gong Sun Xian's lamenting appearance was perfect. Because of it, quite a few people were starting to feel angry on his behalf. Xia Chen, you're worse than an animal. The pavilion master treats you so well, and you still betray the Spirit Rune Pavilion. How can someone like you have the face to live in this world? Forgetting kindness, repaying favor with enmity. Even a dog knows not to bite their master. But you, Xia Chen, I've never seen someone as shameless as you. Come out and have a fair fight with me. I'll take your dog life. After Gong Sun Xian's speech, countless experts of the junior generation stepped forward and cursed at Xia Chen, saying all kinds of ugly words. Many of those had been Xia Chen's worshippers. Before this, they all treated him reverently, practically kneeling and worshipping the ground he walked on. However, today they were like a group of rabid dogs. They were dragging a former king out of his throne. All kinds of ugly displays were thrown Xiachen's way. Seeing this, Xiachen quivered with rage and Guoran clenched his fists tightly. Only Longchen looked on calmly. Growth came at a price. Whether it was Guoran in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Armor College or Xiachen in the Spirit Rune Pavilion, Longchen saw some of their shortcomings. On the martial heaven continent, under his wing, their Dragon Blood Legion was unrivaled. But in terms of actual living experience, they were still too immature. Because of that, Guoran was suppressed to the point of not daring to retaliate, while Xiachen was unable to differentiate between good people and bad people. Thinking carefully, it seemed that as their boss, he hadn't done well enough for them. After suffering came knowledge. Sometimes you had to experience something in order to grow. Pain was your best teacher. After losing the things that you held precious, your youthfulness would be forcibly wiped away. That was the path that you had to traverse to grow. Seeing Xiachen quivering, Longchen decided to let him see this world's cruel and ugly side. Perhaps then he would understand how to differentiate between what was beautiful and what was ugly. He needed a pair of wise eyes to see through the falseness of others. Ah! Xiachen suddenly let out a roar like an injured beast. That roar contained endless pain and fury. All you know is to howl. Is there a point to it? If you're in so much pain, then just kill yourself, sneered someone in the crowd. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning shot through the air without any thunder. It pierced that person's head, causing his smile to stiffen. After that, he collapsed. Since you want to die so badly, I'll help you out. Long Chen's expression was cold as he slowly lowered his finger. He truly loathed these brainless idiots. They didn't have much power, but they knew how to curse others. It was irritating. Long Chen had killed someone with a wave of his hand without any warning at all. Seeing this, the other experts were all shocked. They were talisman cultivators. They had to activate their soul energy before entering their combat state. An elder behind the person who was slain roared furiously. At this moment, runes flowed around him as he entered a combat state. He was that person's elder. Little brute, you dare dash. Die! Xiachen suddenly shouted, and that elder's body directly exploded, transforming into a rain of blood. This is Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman? This sight shocked and horrified all the experts present. Even the half-step divine venerate's expressions changed. When they heard of the Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman, all the experts' expressions changed. They stared at Xiachen in horror. The Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman was rumored to be an ancient secret art. Almost all the major sects had records of the Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman, but none of them were able to replicate it. The legend had it that it was one of the highest core techniques of a talisman cultivator. When a person's soul energy reached a certain limit and was even recognized by the soul of the heavenly Daos, with their mental energy, they could control talismans from immense distances. Moreover, those talismans could be their own or others. Legend had it that, at the highest realm, a single thought could kill millions of experts. Even in the desolate era, when the human race finally climbed up and produced endless heavenly geniuses, only a few people had reached the realm of the Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman. As for after that ancient battle, this kind of divine art basically became a legend. Whether or not it was even true was a question. But Xiachen was able to cause that person's talismans to detonate from across space with just a shout. That was clearly the effect of the Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman. Thus people were aghast. If Xiachen even comprehended the Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman, then people couldn't help looking at Gongsun Xian. They finally formed a bit of doubt about his words. Xiachen was a peerless genius. Even the Heavenly Soul Lock Talisman that had befuddled the talisman world for countless years was solved by him. Then it seemed that solving an ancient talisman and creating an unprecedented talisman was also not that difficult for him. On the other hand, Gongsun Xian hadn't made any advancements in so many years. For him to suddenly become a heavenly talisman master truly did seem suspicious. Quite a few people put away their disdainful expressions and grew cautious. They stealthily fell back. Those crafty fellows felt like they had caught a scent of something out of the ordinary. Xiachen glared at Gongsun Zi. I was very grateful to you for how well you treated me. I have always repaid kindness with kindness, enmity with enmity. You supported me, helping me in my cultivation. In return, I helped you solve so many talismans of the ancient era. You could have become talisman grandmasters any time you wanted. I've already repaid you for what you gave me. As the favors between us are done, let us discuss our enmities. You told me to open the sacred land and set up a trap when I did so, trying to take my body and spirit root. There's nothing good to say about that. Today, only one of us can live to see tomorrow's sun. Xiachen clenched his teeth. Every word he said contained a powerful conviction. He was innately a kind person, but when a kind person was taken advantage of, they became a ferocious beast. The current him only had hatred in his heart. Gongsun Zi shivered and felt a chill in her soul. She had never thought that the always refined and amiable Xiachen would suddenly become a wild devil. Humph! Such big words mean nothing. You have no proof. Whatever lies you make, they are baseless. Your lies will be uncovered later. Now that the grand formation has been activated, the three of you won't be able to escape even if you grow wings. Are you slandering me before your death just to disgust me? Sneered Gongsun Zi, forcing herself to remain calm. Won't be able to escape even with wings? Xiachen raised his head and laughed. You're right, even with wings you won't be able to escape. Do you still remember? I told you that I was in the midst of studying the Desolate Era's yin-yang heaven-sealing talisman. Why don't you open your eyes and look more closely? What is that talisman on the top of the formation? Everyone curiously looked up. They suddenly noticed that at some point, a giant translucent diagram had appeared there. It was a yin-yang taiji diagram. However, because it was very translucent, it couldn't be seen without looking closely. That taiji diagram slowly spun, and that spinning seemed to contain the cadence of life. This taiji diagram didn't give off any aura or pressure. It didn't seem powerful at all. However, all those that saw it had their expressions change. Legend had it that the yin-yang heaven-sealing talisman was capable of sealing an entire world. Other than the actual master, no one could break it. Unless you could exhaust an entire world's power, there was no way to forcibly break it. But if you did exhaust the world's power, it would collapse, and everyone inside would die with the world. Don't worry. My yin-yang heaven-sealing talisman has less than 1/100th of the original talisman's power. Can't contain an entire world. It can't even contain the entire Hidden Dragon Prefecture. But it has enough power to control the Spirit Rune Pavilion's grand formation. All the formations within the Spirit Rune Pavilion have lost their effect, and their power is absorbed by the yin-yang heaven-sealing talisman. If you want to leave, you'll need to break the yin-yang heaven-sealing talisman. But if you do, all of that power will explode along with the Spirit Rune Pavilion's 360,000 formation disk foundations. Then everyone inside here will be blasted to smithereens, sneered Xiachen. Naturally, the three of them had come prepared. Gongsun Xian had set down a heaven-encompassing net for Xiachen, but Xiachen seemed to be worried that the net wasn't strong enough. So he added another unbreakable layer. It seems that you have confidence in yourselves, said Gongsun Xian. His voice was still calm, as if everything was under control. Of course, we're full of confidence. Longchen finally spoke. Xiachen was too angry at this moment, so Longchen had no choice but to step in. This child was too emotional, and it might affect the fighting in a moment. Gongsun Xian finally looked at Longchen. He indifferently said, I forgot about you since you weren't saying anything. I didn't expect the number 1 Academy of the 9 Heavens and 10 Lands to make a child like you, Dean. Longchen smiled. The future of the immortal world belongs to the young. As for old men like you who refuse to die, you act sanctimoniously while holding a belly of evil tricks. It really is a misfortune for the Spirit Rune Pavilion to be led by a pavilion master who robs men and prostitutes women. A shame. Such a shame. How is it a shame? Snorted Gongsun Xian disdainfully. It's a shame that the Spirit Rune Pavilion could be so lucky as to survive the battle of the Desolate Era only to end in such a peaceful era. Don't you feel that it's a shame? Asked Longchen. Ha ha! Gongsun Xian laughed. Big words. You want to destroy my spirit rune pavilion? Little brat, you don't even know that your death is at hand. Laughable. You say that my words are big? I feel like you're the one saying big words. You're even more arrogant than me. Those who say that my death is at hand have long since gone to see a Yama king. Let's stop wasting time with words and acts. Weren't you precisely stalling to mobilize other forces? If you use some old fellows and attack together, you can reduce the damage here to a minimum. Don't worry, I will give you ample time. Even if all of you attack at once, it's no problem. I already gave all of you your chance to survive. If you can't grasp it, don't blame me. I don't mind killing everyone in the formation. It doesn't matter what trump card you have or what sinister scheme you cooked up. Bring them all out. Today, us three brothers will show you what it means for schemes to be absolutely meaningless in front of real power. Long Chen's gaze swept over the crowd grandly. You really do say big words. Pavilion Master, I'm sorry, but I can't wait any longer. This Long Chen's head is mine. Ji Wuing finally lost patience. His figure suddenly vanished from his original location. When Ji Wuing's figure vanished, Guoran suddenly shot into motion. His right hand then smashed into the void, causing a huge hole to appear in the void. The moment the void was destroyed, Ji Wuing's figure came tumbling out like a shooting star. He smashed into a building, blowing it apart. What? Everyone was startled by this sudden turn of events. It was so fast that they couldn't even react. Ji Wuing said that he wanted to kill Long Chun, but in truth, his target was Guoran. However, he hadn't expected that even before his sneak attack landed, he would be sent flying by a punch from Guoran. Fuck! Do you think that I'm a weakling? Your little bit of spatial energy is child's play in front of me. Idiot! Have a taste of your grandpa Guoran's wrath. Guoran stamped on the air, shooting after Ji Wuing. But all of a sudden, Guoran's body twisted. He actually switched direction and punched the void once more. Boom! Cracks spread throughout the void. After that, Ji Wuing's figure appeared from it, and he was blown back by Guoran once again. Everyone was shocked. Ji Wuing's movement art made him seem like a phantom, but Guoran was able to find his location like a prophet. How is he doing this? Even Xiachun was surprised. When Xiachun was hunted by Ji Wuing, he experienced just how terrifying Ji Wuing's spatial energy was. There were countless times where he had almost died to Ji Wuing's sword. Guoran's supreme bone comes from an expert of the all-devil race, and their supreme bones might have formed a resonance. Also, just in terms of the auras of their supreme bones, Guoran's supreme bone far surpasses Ji Wuing's. Most likely, Ji Wuing's supreme bone is still in a state of slumber. Although his spatial energy is mysterious, he can only use it to move in a straight line, and he relies on supplementary movement arts to be nimble. But as soon as he does, Guoran can accurately sense where he is coming from, said Long Chun. Guoran repeatedly swung his arm, blocking Ji Wuing's sharp blade just like that. Every clash unleashed a metallic ringing that shook people's ears. It had to be known that this bone from All-Devil Tianai was unbreakable. Even the Minghong saber was unable to damage it, so it could be seen just how shockingly hard it was. Guoran directly blocked Ji Wuing's attack with it. Others were unaware that Guoran's arm was a supreme bone. They were dumbfounded. Ji Wuing was wielding a world domain divine item, but Guoran was capable of blocking it barehanded? Upon seeing this, their jaws dropped. Guoran had only mobilized his right hand, and his left hand was still behind his back. He sneered. If I used two hands, it would be bullying you. My left hand's power is 10 times greater than my right hand's. If you can force me to use my left hand, I'll count it as your victory. This fellow's bragging was always unreliable. If he dared to stick out his left hand, it would instantly be cut off. However, Guoran truly appeared unrivaled at this moment. With a single punch, even the heavenly Daos quivered. No one dared to question his words. Most importantly, in people's hearts, true experts wouldn't just brag. Regretfully, the one they encountered today was a shameless fellow. When Guoran bragged that his left hand was even stronger, it resulted in quite a few people believing it. Bullshit! Ji Wuying furiously cursed him. With just a few probing blows, he found that this seemingly weak fellow actually possessed a supreme bone. He clearly remembered that last time, this fellow had sneak attacked him and relied entirely on his battle armor to fight. How did he suddenly become a supreme expert today? If Guoran were to say that he had been hiding his power, Ji Wuying wouldn't believe it. If Guoran had used the supreme bone's power in that sneak attack, he would have definitely seriously wounded Ji Wuying. The latter might not have been able to escape. However, he would never have dreamt that this supreme genius was actually made artificially. Guoran's bragging shocked and infuriated him. No matter what movement art Ji Wuying used, Guoran always found him. He was somehow able to accurately pinpoint Ji Wuiying's location. Ji Wuiying's ephemeral spatial arts were dull in front of Guoran, and that infuriated him. As an assassin, he needed to rely on assassination arts to slay his opponents. It was the most profound, effortless way to kill someone. This was an assassin's creed and the standard practice for an assassin. They didn't face their opponents directly. If they didn't succeed in their sneak attack, they would distance themselves, vanishing until the opponent's guard was lowered or another opening appeared to kill them in one blow. When assassins killed people, they needed precise control over the environment, weather, skill, fluctuations of the human heart, and many other areas. They would only attack when they had an opportunity, and if they didn't have that opportunity, they would create it. Assassins needed absolute cool. But when Long Chan saw Ji Wuiying furiously cursing, he was surprised. This was the Bloodkill Hall's #1 heavenly genius? He immediately started having suspicions. He didn't know much about Ji Wuiying, but he did understand Emputa. Would he really raise such an idiot disciple? A huge explosion then caused the world to change color, and the entire formation quivered. This was a frontal clash of pure power without any tricks. As a result, powerful astral winds buffeted the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Even with the formations protecting them, countless buildings seemed to be on the verge of crumbling. Because of it, the expressions of the Spirit Rune Pavilion's experts changed. A direct clash already? Long Chun frowned even harder. Suddenly, a world appeared behind Ji Wuiying. That world contained a giant hand that covered the heavens, and it reached out while emitting endless spatial energy. After that, sacred light descended from atop the 9 heavens, illuminating Ji Wuiying's body. He seemed to have become the son of heaven and earth, the one blessed with all the world's favor. The next moment, the hand holding his sword became as white as jade, and Grand Dao runes appeared on top of it. Supreme Bone! Startled cries rang out. Ji Wuiying was starting to utilize the Supreme Bone's full power, so they finally sensed its aura. Even for the old monsters present, this was their first time seeing Supreme Bone. The appearance of a Supreme Bone caused the world to change color and the 10,000 Daos to roar. It was a terrifying sight. However, Guoran was delighted to see Ji Wuiying do this. The most fearful aspect of Ji Wuiying was his assassination arts. But after being beaten back several times, this fellow actually forgot about his status as an assassin, wanting to rely on brute force. That was basically helping Guoran. Even so, Guoran kept his expression neutral. He still had one hand behind his back even as Ji Wuiying's power crazily soared. Keep working hard. Bring out your full power. As for myself, I still won't use my left hand, said Guoran calmly. His arm quivered and explosive power burst out as if an ancient beast was awakening. Suddenly, Ji Wuiying and Guoran shouted at the same time. In front of countless horrified gazes, they smashed into each other like 2 shooting stars. Both of their powers erupted to their peaks. It was a simple and explosive clash. Boom! The earth quivered. The clash between Supreme Bones unleashed a ripple that instantly destroyed countless buildings in the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Only a small portion of the buildings was able to survive the wave of destruction, and it was because countless formation runes lit up, blocking the impact partially. As for the experts present, they weren't so fortunate. Even as they clutched talismans in their hands and set up layers of defenses, they were still blasted apart. In front of the power unleashed by these two, Those protective talismans were unable to provide the slightest protection. Only top experts were able to block the wave of destruction. When the gust settled, they saw Guorant's arm quivering, holding Ji Wuying's sword. Ji Wuying's sword was also quivering. It appeared as if he was trying to shake off Guoran but was unable to. At this moment, waves of killing intent came from their supreme bones. It was as if their two supreme bones were fighting instead of them. The aura of supreme bones filled the air and terrified people, forcing them to be reverential. The supreme bones seemed to represent the world's peak power. At this moment, Ji Wuying suddenly raised his head and roared. His hair billowed chaotically as if he was a wild devil beast. He then pulled on his sword with all his might. However, no matter what he did, that sword didn't move in the slightest. It was like it had fused with Guorant's hand. Guoran shook his head. "You are the Bloodkill Hall's #1 expert? What a fake title. I'll send you on your way." Guorant's left leg shot out like lightning, attacking Ji Wuying's abdomen. At that moment, black armor covered his leg. Ji Wuying's expression completely changed. He hastily let go of his sword to dodge, but he didn't expect that even before Guorant's kick landed, it would shoot a ray of divine light and strike him in his abdomen. Seeing this scene, Long Chun shook his head. Although this surprise attack was great, as an expert of the Bloodkill Hall, no matter how trashy Ji Wuying was, there was no way he couldn't dodge it. Other than having a supreme bone, this fellow was garbage in all other aspects. Startled cries rang out from the survivors. Once Ji Wuying's abdomen was pierced, Guoran pressed the attack, refusing to spare him. Divine light burst out of Guoran's feet, and he shot forward, reaching Ji Wuying in an instant with a punch. Boom! Ji Wuying now had a terrified expression. Panicked, he formed one-handed seals and vanished. But just as he did, Guoran punched the space beside him, resulting in Ji Wuying's figure reappearing, except for the half of his body that was obliterated by Guoran's punch. His spatial energy was unable to escape the senses of Guoran's supreme bone. Guoran always found him. After being struck by Guoran's punch, Ji Wuying's remaining body began to wither. Terrifying devil chi spread throughout his body. It had to be known that Guoran's supreme bone had posed a great deal of trouble for Long Chun as well. Even with the primal chaos bead's help, he had spent a great deal of effort to dispel the devil chi that had struck him. Even Long Chen's terrifying physical body was unable to deal with it. As for Ji Wuying, considering that he was fleeing, he didn't have any defenses up, so this punch had taken his life. Ji Wuying's body slowly faded away. It was like it was being incinerated. Ji Wuying screamed in terror, but he only had half of his body, and now it was starting to fade. He then smacked his face with his hand, trying to reject the devil chi. As a result, just touching his face caused his head to explode. At that moment, it wasn't just Guoran that was dumbfounded. Long Chun, Xia Chun, and the others were also dumbfounded. Guoran, be careful in the future. If a mosquito bites your face, don't be so stupid as to slap it with your right hand, warned Long Chun. Guoran was shaken. Ji Wuying was so anxious that he forgot about his own supreme bone. In his explosive state, he ended up using his hand to strike his own face. After all, Guoran still didn't have absolute control over his supreme bone. If he slapped his own face, would it also cause his head to explode? Ji Wuying had killed himself with his own hand. Even the old monsters that had lived for countless years never saw such a thing. They couldn't even believe it. A supreme genius ultimately died to his own hand? People couldn't help looking at Guoran, who, from the start to the end, still had one hand behind his back. From start to finish, Guoran appeared to possess the calmness and grace of a powerful expert. It was as if everything was under his control, and it made him appear suave and handsome. Guoran was pleased inside at having those people stare at him. He had a feeling as if he could look down on the rest of the world. Just then, Ji Wuying's corpse suddenly moved and everyone jumped in shock. Guoran's expression also changed. He then rushed to Ji Wuying's body, slashing his saber and cutting off his hand. That hand was his supreme bone. However, what shocked Guoran was that the supreme bone's runes rapidly dimmed. corroded, transforming into a puddle of blood. Ah, my supreme bone! How can this be? Guoran almost cried. He had thought it through. In the future, he would have a right arm supreme bone and a left hand supreme bone. With those two, just who would he have to fear in this life? However, just as he was enjoying everyone's gaze on him, this supreme bone suddenly rotted. Something strange about Ji Wuing, but we'll discuss it later. We have more important things to do right now. Long Chun eyed the rotted corpse, and his gaze was surprisingly solemn. However, he had to get Guoran back on track. Things weren't over yet. Ji Wuing was dead. His death was fishy and a bit bizarre. Because of this, Gong Sun Zi and Gong Sun Xian's expressions weren't very good. Long Chun saw their unease and fear. The power that Guoran displayed shocked them. It went without saying that Guoran's display was absolutely outstanding this time. After all, he had defeated Ji Wuing effortlessly. In truth, it was all due to Ji Wuing being an idiot. He was practically cooperating with Guoran the entire time. Guoran didn't specialize in long-range combat, especially not without his battle armor. Hence, as long as Ji Wuing didn't use his supreme bone and simply made Guoran lose track of him, then no matter how trash his assassination arts were, it would make Guoran uncomfortable. However, this fellow, an assassin, actually chose to use his weakest area to fight someone's strongest area. It could be said that Ji Wuing had used his life for Guoran to beautifully accomplish his act. Even with Long Chen's intelligence, he was unable to tell just what kind of existence Ji Wuing was. Just what was he thinking? Long Chen was still befuddled. Now, Gong Sun Xian, Gong Sun Zi, it's time to settle the enmity between us, announced Xia Chen. Gong Sun Xian sneered. A traitor like you thinks that you can change the truth just because you found a few helpers? Do you think that I'm not prepared? Suddenly, Gong Sun Xian waved his hand, and tens of thousands of buildings within the Spirit Rune Pavilion lit up. Those buildings that weren't destroyed were actually formation discs. They all exploded now, unleashing a wave of divine light that locked onto the three of them. Every building erupted with a terrifying aura. After that, millions of runes lit up like millions of eyes, unleashing light that bound Long Chun and the others. Xia Chun, you know how terrifying the Spirit Rune Pavilion's foundation is. I already set up an unbreakable net for you. Do you think a single yin-yang heaven-sealing talisman can let you secure victory? I simply didn't want to make a big fuss over things. But now, what shouldn't be destroyed has been destroyed. I have no further misgivings. Ji Wuing really was trash. The #1 heavenly genius of the Bloodkill Hall is inferior to even a third-rate assassin. In all my years, I've never seen such an idiot. But that's fine. His death won't change anything, and it certainly won't change your fates, sneered Gong Sun Xian. Xia Chun, for the sake of our past love, if you are willing to reform, my Spirit Rune Pavilion is willing to accept you. We can forget the past grudge, and I'll treat it as if you didn't do anything. We can get along once more, proposed Gong Sun Zi. Ha ha ha, Xia Chun laughed furiously. My eyes have been opened to the world. The two of you are the most shameless people I've ever met, bar none. I was clearly the one harmed by you, and yet you make it sound like you're the victims. Are you hellbent on protecting your masks? And will you keep using this mask to trick others? You're overthinking it. After today, there will no longer be a Spirit Rune Pavilion, nor will there be a Gong Sun Xian and Gong Sun Zi. Gong Sun Zi's originally calm expression instantly grew cold. Since you want to die so badly, don't blame me for not giving you a chance. At this moment, the Spirit Rune Pavilion's entire grand formation shuddered. Sharp swords condensed and pointed at the three of them. Even so, Xia Chun, Guoran, and Long Chen's expressions remained calm. They didn't show the slightest fear, nor did they seem to have any intention of blocking or dodging. They just stared at Gong Sun Zi and Gong Sun Xian nonchalantly. Seeing their expressions, the two of them felt a chill run through them. Kill them! For some reason, Gong Sun Zi felt increasingly uneasy inside. As her fear grew, her face twisted and she directly gave the order. However, even after a while, The sharp swords merely pointed at Xia Chen's group of 3. No attack was launched. What? Gong Sun Xian and Gong Sun Zi were shocked by this. Gong Sun Xian also shouted, "Attack!" Likewise, even after several breaths of time, other than the rumbling of the grand formation, everything was deathly silent. The most frightening thing was that the air suddenly became calm. Everyone was shocked. Just what was going on? Xia Chun looked at the bewildered Gong Sun Xian and Gong Sun Zi. Do you know just how foolish you are? Due to your help, I did my best to research all kinds of runes. For over half a year, I have been constantly strengthening the grand formation, so I know how to operate it. Also, on the surface, you told me that it was a preventative measure to block the pressure from the Clear River Gate, Talisman Life Path, Heavenly Talisman Sect, and others. But I knew you had wild ambitions. In the past few years, they have been secretly suppressing the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Unluckily for them, you are a vengeful person, and this is all your preparation to devour them. Quite a few elders here looked grave when they heard that. They couldn't help looking at Gong Sun Xian. Gong Sun Xian furiously shouted, "Don't listen to his nonsense. He's trying to start a fight between us." Xia Chun ignored Gong Sun Xian and continued, "Other than helping you decode all kinds of talismans, I also spent all day thinking about how to strengthen the grand formation. I knew that I would have to leave the Spirit Rune Pavilion one day, but I was hoping to turn the Spirit Rune Pavilion into the uncontested overlord of the Heavenly Talisman Starfield before I left. That way, no one could bully you and I could follow my boss with a free heart. For that purpose, I spent day and night studying, constantly making improvements. But you didn't know about this. I was hoping to give you a nice surprise one day, but I didn't expect you two to be the ones to give me the surprise. You deceived me. What I hate most are swindlers." Xia Chun was clenching his teeth, his face distorted with hatred. Every warrior in the Dragonblood Legion was brave and fearless even in the face of death. But cheating and deceit were intolerable to them. You don't need to keep shouting. Those people in control of the Grand Formation are already dead. The only one capable of controlling the Grand Formation now is myself. Xia Chun took out a refined formation disc. Smaller formation discs were normally the size of a palm, while the larger ones might be the size of a chessboard. However, this one was only the size of a walnut and was carved with runes even finer than a single strand of hair. Other than the heaven-shrouding defense formation, all of the Spirit Rune Pavilion's core formations are under my command. Since the heaven-shrouding defense formation has my yin-yang heaven-sealing talisman on it, everything within the pavilion is under my control. Now, do you understand just who is the tortoise caught in a jar? Asked Xia Chun coldly. Gong Sun Zi slipped a hand behind her back. Xia Chun caught that little movement and sneered. You don't believe me? Keep trying. You'll then know what despair is. Gong Sun Zi's expression grew uglier and uglier. She was trying to link up with the formation discs in all the buildings but was not having any luck. Just as Xia Chun said, control over the formations was out of their hands. Gong Sun Zi stealthily glanced at Gong Sun Xian. However, just like her, Gong Sun Xian was bewildered. He had no idea what to do in this situation. Xia Chun then looked at the refined formation disc in his hand. A touch of pain appeared on his face. Z, do you know? This was originally the gift I was going to give you. Look, your name is carved on the bottom. It's also your favorite pink color. Xia Chun turned the formation disc over. As he said, Z's name was carved into it. Furthermore, a beautiful flower design was around the characters. Xia Chun had designed it meticulously. Gong Sun Zi looked at her name there and instantly wept. Only now did she realize just how foolish she had acted. I wanted to repay the Spirit Rune Pavilion, but ultimately the Spirit Rune Pavilion will be destroyed by my hands. The gift that I was going to give you has now become the tool I'll use to kill you. What an irony. The heavens truly toy with man. Xia Chun's voice was heavy, containing immense pain. Xia Chun, Gong Sun Zi choked back her sobs. Suddenly, the grand formation shuddered and rays of divine light shot out. People amongst the crowd were struck and instantly killed, wiped out of existence. Hundreds of them died just like that. It happened so suddenly that everyone inside panicked, staring in horror at Xia. Don't worry, the people I killed were the ones who insulted me just now, saying that I should be killed. As for the rest of you, as long as you don't mess around, I won't take your lives, said Xia coldly. After saying that, Xia looked at Gongsun Xian. He slowly raised the formation disc in his hand. Just as Xia raised the formation disc, a talisman suddenly shot out of Gongsun Xian's hand. Heaven and earth shuddered. Heaven-shaking talisman. Startled cries rang out. They instantly recognized the divine talisman that Gongsun Xian was famous for. The heaven-shaking talisman reached Xia in an instant, not giving him any chance to react. But then, a mocking smile appeared on Xia's face. The formation disc in his hand quivered ever so slightly, and a rainbow-colored barrier appeared before his body. Bang! The predicted heaven-shaking explosion didn't occur. The heaven-shaking talisman, whose name shook the heavenly talisman starfield, only let out a depressed sound before being devoured by the light barrier. What? Everyone was shocked, especially the elders. They were very familiar with the heaven-shaking talisman's power. In his prime, Gongsun Xian relied on the secret art to defeat a lot of experts. It had saved him from crises multiple times. Moreover, ever since Gongsun Xian had comprehended it, he had spent all his time researching how to improve its power. It could be said that his heaven-shaking talismans had exceeded those made by his ancestors. A talisman on the level of the heaven-shaking talisman was something that even Gongsun Xian needed to spend several months on to create a single one. After the inscription process, it required the nourishment of his soul and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Hence, after months spent on the inscription, the talisman was nourished for 3 years before it could reach its maximum potential. Also, a heaven-shaking talisman required a huge amount of soul energy to detonate. A half-step divine venerate like Gongsun Xian was only able to detonate a single one at a time. The talismans here were different from the ones found in the outside world. Most people might see others simply tossing out hundreds or thousands of talismans at once. As those talismans filled the air, they truly appeared glorious. However, true experts of the talisman Tao didn't buy talismans made by others, and they only used their own talismans. In their hands, those talismans could unleash the greatest power. The stronger the talisman, the greater the requirements for using it. For example, the amount of soul energy required to activate them increased, and they could not be used lightly. Hence, despite Gongsun Xian's fame, only a very few people had actually seen him use his heaven-shaking talisman. Today, so many people were bearing witness to the heaven-shaking talisman. However, the expected power didn't show itself, so people were dumbfounded. The heaven-shaking talisman is a kind of ancestral talisman, one of the first talismans. It can be developed into thousands of different variants. I once warned you that you had taken the wrong path. You only reached the lowest level. The power looks immense but cannot be concentrated. So what's the point? If you didn't turn back, it would be too late. However, you cursed me, saying that I was conceited, saying that I couldn't see your depth. I'll show you what the true heaven-shaking talisman is now. Xia suddenly swung his hand, and a talisman shot out. Compared to Gongsun Xian's attack, this talisman was silent, without any aura. From it, not a trace of the mighty heaven-shaking power from Gongsun Xian's talisman could be felt. However, the expressions of the senior generation completely changed. That talisman was like a thunderous gust, and yet it didn't cause any spatial friction. Instead, it seemed that the power of the friction was absorbed by the talisman. Heaven-shielding talisman. Gongsun Xian roared and clapped his hands together. After that, a talisman appeared between his hands, and he spat a mouthful of blood onto the talisman. A blood-colored barrier then manifested around him. In that instant, Gongsun Xian seemed to have aged a great deal. He had clearly spent a great deal of essence blood to strengthen his talisman's power. That meant that he sensed a mortal threat. Boom! Runes flew about, shaking people's ears. After that, a heaven-shaking explosion drowned out all other sounds. All that remained where the explosion occurred was a twisted space. The runes fluttered like beautiful petals and slowly settled. When people's vision was restored, they saw Gongsun Xian. His hands were still clasped in front of him, and his blood-colored barrier was still covering him. He blocked it. Gongsun Xian really is powerful. The senior experts could tell that Xia Chen's heaven-shaking talisman was clearly a level stronger than Gongsun Xian's. Gongsun Xian's heaven-shaking talisman had unleashed an explosion that caused quite a bit of energy to scatter. Although it looked amazing, it reduced its power a great deal. As for Xia Chen's heaven-shaking talisman, its power was concentrated. Obviously, the latter was harder to block. From the displays of both of their heaven-shaking talismans, it was clear that while Xia Chen's heaven-shaking talisman possessed less power than Gongsun Xian's, its power was concentrated and definitely had greater destructive power. However, for Gongsun Xian to be able to block Xia Chen's attack even after expending the energy for his own heaven-shaking talisman, he was clearly strong. Just as everyone was sighing in amazement, a sound pierced their ears. They saw Gongsun Xian's barrier cracking. "What?" Startled cries rang out. As the barrier cracked, Gongsun Xian's body also cracked. Blood began to gush out of those cracks. Gongsun Xian looked at his cracking barrier and body. He then slowly looked back at Gongsun Zi. Gongsun Zi let out a heart-wrenching cry and threw herself at Gongsun Xian. Gongsun Xian also tried to reach out as if he wanted to touch her face, but his body didn't hold on for that long. He shattered, his life coming to an end. Xia Chen's heaven-shaking talisman was the true heaven-shaking talisman. He didn't have more soul energy than Gongsun Xian, but his talisman's power was on par with Gongsun Xian's. Most importantly, its power was concentrated completely onto Gongsun Xian's body. "Grandpa! You can't die. If you die, I'll have nothing. How am I supposed to live if you die?" Gongsun Zi held Gongsun Xian's corpse and wailed. Seeing this, Long Chen's face was cold, and he slowly raised a finger. As for Guoran, he took the initiative, sending his black saber piercing toward Gongsun Zi's heart. But all of a sudden, a talisman flew out and knocked aside Guoran's saber. "Xia Chen, you?" Guoran was startled. Xia Chen was the one to block him. "Brother, thank you, but I'll handle my own affairs. I don't want you to carry a bad reputation." Xia Chen shook his head and patted Guoran's shoulder. He knew that Guoran was willing to take on this burden for him. Guoran was worried that Xia Chen wouldn't be able to do this. Guoran then looked at Long Chen, who indicated for him to remain silent. They would leave things to Xia Chen. Gongsun Zi was lost in her grief. She seemed to not realize what had just happened. She still knelt over Gongsun Xian's corpse, tears covering her face. That appearance was truly pitiable. Seeing Xia Chen walking toward Gongsun Zi, quite a few people couldn't bear to watch. But before they could say anything, their elders told them to stay silent with their eyes. "If you had known that this day would come, would you have made the same decision? I was fully devoted to you, and you repaid me with deceit." Xia Chen walked over to Gongsun Zi and sighed. Gongsun Zi stood while crying. She no longer had her icy and overbearing air, and she seemed to have become a weak little girl. Even as she wept, she said, "I'm sorry. I've let you down. You can kill me now. If there is another life, I am willing to be your horse just to repay my sins." A sword appeared in Xia Chen's hand and mercilessly stabbed through Gongsun Zi's chest. "You!" Gongsun Zi looked at Xia Chen in disbelief. The grief in her eyes vanished, replaced with shock, hatred, and unwillingness. "Isn't this what you wanted? Why are you blaming me?" Xia Chen looked at Gongsun Zi coldly. "You really are a scheming woman. Frighteningly so. You are so selfish that you are willing to sacrifice everything else. Before this, I thought that you were manipulated by your grandfather. Now I find that it was all your idea. Just now, you were colluding with Gongsun Xian to attack me together. Gongsun Xian would draw my attention while you captured my brother, Guoran. You specialize in the world-shifting soul lock talisman. With a sneak attack, you'd have an 80% chance of managing to transport Guoran to your side and capture him. If you succeeded, even if it wouldn't count as a victory, you would at least have a way out. You both agreed to this plan, but when your grandfather attacked, you didn't do anything because you were afraid. You weren't afraid of Guoran or me but of Boss Longchen. That's because I told you that there is no one in the 9 heavens and 10 lands who is a match for my boss in the same realm. No one can play tricks on him. Thus, although you agreed to the plan, you didn't act according to it. When your grandfather attacked, you didn't make your move. Your grandfather thought that you were waiting for a better chance. But when he was defending and you still didn't do anything, he realized the truth. He's nothing good either. Despite knowing that he was going to die, he wanted to expose you. But you were quite vicious, directly throwing yourself at him to make sure his last breath ran out as quickly as possible. He will never be able to say the truth now. Then you started crying and putting on a show. You know me. You know that, with your grandfather dead, I've obtained my revenge. Then once I left, the Spirit Rune Pavilion will be yours. To exchange your grandfather for so many benefits, your scheming really is brilliant. When Xiachan said this, the experts present sucked in a cold gasp of air. This kind of scheming was simply too terrifying, wasn't it? Even these old foxes didn't feel like they were capable of this. Even though they had spent a lifetime scheming, there was no way they would be able to react so quickly and come up with such a scheme on the spot. They had no doubt about Xiachen's words. One reason was that Xiachen didn't need to lie. The other reason was that they had also sensed the spiritual fluctuations between this granddaughter and grandfather. They knew that these two had been scheming something. However, the greatest evidence was Gongsun Xian's furious expression right before his death. They had felt it to be very odd. Now, they knew that it was because Gongsun Zi had used and deceived him. He had mostly likely realized it before his death and wanted to expose her, only for Gongsun Zi to silently put him down. He didn't manage to say anything before his death. Now, thinking back to all of Gongsun Zi's methods, everyone couldn't help feeling a chill down their spines. Her scheming ability was terrifying. In fact, they hoped for Gongsun Zi to quickly die now. If she were to control the Spirit Rune Pavilion, then it seemed that those with bad relationships to the Spirit Rune Pavilion would be schemed to death one by one. She was terrifying. Xiachan, listen to me. It's not like that. Gongsun Zi pleaded. She still wanted to defend herself. However, Xiachan didn't give her that chance. I am also someone who likes to use smarts. Although I wouldn't say that I've reached my boss's level, I wouldn't lose to others. The reason that I so foolishly let myself be used by you is because I loved you. My boss told me that after loving someone, there's no need to use your brain. Now that I think back to it, I really am foolish. There were so many obvious questionable areas all this time, but I still chose to trust you. However, I should thank you. You're the first woman I loved. You taught me the evil in people's hearts, and you also taught me how to distinguish whether a woman is good or bad. Xiachan, please, I don't want to die. Give me a chance. Gongsun Zi wept. This time it was no act. She really was terrified and did not want to die. Like I said, would you have made the same decisions if you had known that this day would come? In truth, this is the path you made yourself walk step by step. Even when I came straight here, you refused to admit to your sins. You resisted with all your power. Otherwise, I would have only crippled your cultivation base. But for you to even scheme against your own grandfather, I don't even know how many people you would scheme to death in the future. You are the one who sealed your own fate, said Xiachan, shaking his head. Xiachan, I'll change. Mountains and rivers change, but people don't. I can't give you that chance. Did you ever give those people you schemed to death a chance? Just go in peace. In your next life, don't always scheme against others. Maybe you'll be happier then. After that, Xiachan pulled out his sword. Gongsun Zi's body quivered and then slowly collapsed. The aura of her life slowly dissipated. Looking at Gongsun Zi's expression in death, people couldn't help shaking their heads. Just before this, she had such an expression of pitiful pain. But after death, her face was twisted with malevolence. A person's nature was simply their nature. Some people had felt pity for her and wanted to say something. Thinking back, those people now felt cold sweat drip down their backs. If Gongsun Zi did live, perhaps they would die in the future without even realizing it. Suddenly, Xiachun held Gongsun Zi's corpse and wept. Guoran and Long Chun sighed. People all said that their first love was the most beautiful. But Xiachun's first love was the most cruel. He had personally killed the person that he once loved. That was truly cruel. The experts present were silent as they watched Xiachun weep. The people from the Spirit Rune Pavilion in particular had no words. These two had been the heavenly couple of the Spirit Rune Pavilion, the ones who could have brought them to an unprecedented glory. Now, unforeseen events turned that into nothing more than an illusion. That feeling of having reality change so much was indescribable. Even then, no one dared to move. The Yin-Yang heaven-sealing talisman was still trapping them here, and no one could leave. Xiachun still possessed the power to kill all of them. After crying, Xiachun slowly calmed down. Long Chun then patted him on the shoulder, and Xiachun took a deep breath. "Boss, I'm fine. Since it's the past, let it pass. I believe that there's a kind woman waiting for me." Long Chun was relieved to hear that Xiachun hadn't given up on himself. Guoran joked, "Just one? I have a premonition that I'll have at least 3 beauties. Otherwise, I won't be able to stand by boss's side." After laughing, the depressing air had mostly faded. Having settled his emotions, Xiachun looked over everyone. "I have an important matter to announce to everyone today. This matter relates to the future of the entire Heavenly Talisman Starfield. Starting today, the Spirit Rune Pavilion's sacred land is open to the entire Heavenly Talisman Starfield." "What?" Xiachun's words completely shocked countless experts. People couldn't believe their ears, especially the experts from the Spirit Rune Pavilion. The Pavilion Master was already dead. Was Xiachun still not willing to let the Spirit Rune Pavilion off? "Xiachun, we are willing to worship you as Pavilion Master, but you can't share the sacred treasure that our ancestors left behind with the public. That really is unbearable." One of the Spirit Rune Pavilion's elders couldn't help stepping forward. "That's right. You're our new Pavilion Master. Everything here is yours, so there's no need to do this," cried out another elder. To them, what was important wasn't who the Pavilion Master was. What was important was that the giant tree known as the Spirit Rune Pavilion didn't collapse. It had to be known that if the Spirit Rune Pavilion's sacred land was open to the public, tens of thousands of ancient talismans and tomes would be lost. The talismans of the desolate era were priceless treasures left behind by their ancestors. So how could they be shared with the public? This proposal of Xiachun's moved the hearts of the other sections. However, they didn't dare to randomly speak here. The Spirit Rune Pavilion's sacred land had been locked for countless years. That was why, while they did desire it, they had never thought of obtaining this ancient inheritance. Ever since the gate to the sacred land was opened, these powers started forming a good relationship with the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Their goal was obvious. The fact that the Spirit Rune Pavilion had opened their holy land practically set it in stone that they would rise to the top of the Heavenly Talisman Starfield. It was only a matter of time. If these sects sucked up to them now, they would still be in time. Hopefully, their sects wouldn't eventually be erased due to not having a good relationship with this future overlord. This was also why Gongsun Xian and Gongsun Zi had chosen to use this occasion to make a move on Xiachun. They had been hoping to use these people to deal with him together. After all, it was a chance for them to show their loyalty. However, nothing went as they had hoped. This particular scheme had ended before even starting. In any case, these people truly were moved by the thought of obtaining the treasures within the sacred land. In truth, there's no need for junior brother Xiachun to do this. All talisman cultivators are a family. If there's anything that one doesn't understand, everyone can study it together. Opening up the secrets of the Spirit Rune Pavilion does seem a bit inappropriate, said a half-step divine venerate. After all, the Spirit Rune Pavilion possesses the most ancient inheritance of the Heavenly Talisman Starfield. It needs its own solid foundation, said another elder. All of them were courteous. They were clearly saying that they wouldn't be so greedy. They didn't want to offend the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Just sharing a few talismans would be more than enough. Their goal was to get some soup while the Spirit Rune Pavilion took the meat. On the other hand, The expressions of the experts from weaker sects weren't very good. If this happened, they probably wouldn't get any benefits. Let alone soup, they wouldn't even get to lick the bottom of the bowl. In the end, it was power that counted. People like them didn't even have the right to interject. They could only endure. However, they were all surprised when Xiachan said, "Well, I came to the Spirit Rune Pavilion only to learn. My goal has always been to follow my boss. Even if this grandfather and granddaughter duo didn't die today, I wouldn't be staying here. Also, when I said that there won't be a Spirit Rune Pavilion after today, it isn't because of my enmity with the two of them. It is because the Spirit Rune Pavilion's existence is a disgrace for the Heavenly Talisman Starfield." Ah! Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what Xiachun was saying. Just how was the Spirit Rune Pavilion a disgrace? When I opened the Sacred Lands gate, I saw a record left behind by a senior. That senior had sealed himself in the Sacred Land right before his death. His physical body remained, but he had no head. When I read what he left behind, I learned that he had no face to see future generations, so he intentionally destroyed his head. When Xiachun opened the gate to the Sacred Land, he saw a corpse and a sealed suicide note. The note recorded the origin of this sacred land. The truth was that in that ancient battle, every sect had participated. Back then, the Spirit Rune Pavilion was actually only a third-rate sect. If they only didn't join the others in that battle, that would be one thing. But they actually took advantage of the chaos to sneak into some other sects and steal their secrets. Those sects that they stole from were essentially all third-rate sects as well. They didn't dare to go to second-rate sects. The battle from back then was truly apocalyptic. Although the human race won in the end, it was a miserable victory. The supreme sects and experts fought to the death and were wiped out. Even amongst other sects, less than 1% of their inheritance remained. The line of talisman cultivators then received a heavy blow and never managed to recover from the loss. As for the Spirit Rune Pavilion, due to not participating in the battle and sneaking in some benefits, they managed to preserve quite a bit of their power. At that time, the Pavilion Master hid all the treasures that he had stolen. Those treasures could not see the light of day in that era. Otherwise, others would all know what the Spirit Rune Pavilion had done. Thus, those secret treasures were passed down one era after another, and they still didn't dare to take them out. The secret of these treasures was passed down from Pavilion Master to Pavilion Master only. At the time of the 7th generation Pavilion Master, the 7th generation Pavilion Master made a heavy decision. He directly sealed himself and all the treasures inside, placing a talisman on the gate that was almost impossible to decode. That was the origin of the Sacred Land. That 7th generation Pavilion Master viewed the actions of his ancestors as a disgrace. Hence, he sealed himself inside and wait for a destined person to expose the truth. As the Pavilion Master, he didn't have the courage to reveal the truth himself. But continuing to keep the secret was something that his conscience would not allow him to do. Ultimately, he made such a decision, leaving everything to future generations. When they heard this explanation, the Spirit Rune Pavilion's experts were dismayed. They couldn't believe that their ancestors would do such a horrible thing. It was everyone's first time hearing that the Spirit Rune Pavilion actually possessed such a dirty history. So much time had passed, so they didn't know how they should judge the Spirit Rune Pavilion's ancestors. They were cowards who feared death, but it was due to them that these ancient inheritances were preserved. However, to say that this was an accomplishment would only cause people to look at them with scorn for their methods. These treasures are the collective wisdom of our ancestors, so it should be shared amongst all talisman cultivators. According to the 7th generation Pavilion Master's will, when these ancient tomes see the light of day once more, they should be shared with everyone to atone for the sins of the Spirit Rune Pavilion. Hence, I will act according to the 7th generation Pavilion Master's will. This learning will be shared with everyone who wishes to learn. Perhaps that is the only way for the Spirit Rune Pavilion to apologize for their crimes. Other than that, the reason I said that the Spirit Rune Pavilion is gone after today is because I don't want the disciples and elders to carry the sins of their ancestors. Thus, the Spirit Rune Pavilion is hereby disbanded. Everyone can find new homes. After saying that, countless people were delighted. Whether it was to Xia or the 7th generation pavilion master, they were filled with gratitude. Such magnanimity was admirable. Let's go. We'll take a look at the sacred land together. Xia led everyone to a hidden location. Upon arriving at the Spirit Rune Pavilion's sacred land, people saw endless ancient tomes and talismans. They also saw a headless skeleton. At this moment, all of the heavenly talisman starfield's experts walked over to the skeleton and kowtowed. They felt great admiration for this senior. As a pavilion master, he crushed his own head to atone for his ancestors' sins. That wasn't even his own sin, yet he was willing to give up his life to make up for the sins of his ancestors. How many people were capable of assuming such a burden? Upon entering the sacred land, Xia looked around. Nothing had changed. He knew that while Gongsun Xian and Gongsun Zi were busy hunting him down, they weren't in the mood to investigate these things. Anyway, they simply didn't have the power to study these things. In front of everyone, Xia made an inventory of ancient books, talismans, tomes, inscriptions, and other treasures. Starting today, these things would be shared amongst all talisman cultivators. They could flip through them, copy them, and do whatever they wanted with them. But the treasures had to stay here. This sacred land now belonged to everyone. Anyone was qualified to study these, but they definitely could not allow anyone to bring them away or damage them. This sacred land would be the sacred land of the entire heavenly talisman starfield. 18 top sects would join forces to guard it, and they couldn't let the slightest accident happen to this place. The people to copy them had to be experts of the top 18 sections. They also had to monitor anyone coming and going. If anyone even dared to form a wicked thought toward this place, they would be the enemy of the entire heavenly talisman starfield and summarily executed. Xia spent 10 days making a copy of all of these things. Many of these talismans were things that he had studied, but there were many that he had neglected due to not having any use for them at the time. He would have to study them in the future slowly. The Spirit Rune Pavilion signboard was torn down during this time. As for the resources in the treasury, Xia ordered people to directly exchange them for money and distribute it amongst people. A slightly bigger portion was given to those poorer sects, while those powerful sects were given a bit less. That was because those with power didn't need to worry about running out of money, while the poorer ones had difficulty just surviving. Xia hoped to lessen the pressure on them at least a bit. As for Xia himself, he didn't take any portion. He even exchanged a few of his own valuable things for money to distribute. To use his words, he had come to the Spirit Rune Pavilion with nothing. Now that he was leaving, he didn't want to take anything other than knowledge. There was nothing he could do about the Spirit Rune Pavilion being disbanded. At least he could feel a bit more at peace if he did this. Countless people felt admiration for Xia's actions. They also sighed over how blind Gongsun Zi was. Just how many women would dream of having such a good husband? But she actually wanted to kill him. In the end, she simply destroyed herself. Once the copies were done, Xia accepted an invitation from the senior experts to expound on the Tao. Xia then shared his own experiences and knowledge with everyone. This one Tao discussion lasted 3 days and nights. Countless experts came to listen. Seeing those experts' reverent and worshipful appearances, Guoran was jealous. Showing off silently really is the strongest. I thought that I already did very well, but this fellow immediately tossed me into the dust. Where is the justice? Longchan and Guoran sat in a restaurant, staring at the sea of figures around Xia. Longchan smiled. Xia is using his real ability, using runes to enter the Tao. Every single one of his words contains profundities and gives food for thought. As for you, me? What about me? Did you see that I used a single arm to beat up Bloodkill Hall's #1 genius? Quibbled Guoran stubbornly. Give it up. That Ji Wuiying was an idiot. I refuse to believe that he's the Bloodkill Hall's #1 genius. Unless Enputa got crap in his head, he wouldn't raise such a pig. Let me put it to you this way. I mentioned my fight with the 9 underworld Luocha. Even without a supreme bone, within the same realm, she could easily slay Ji Wuiying. Ji Wuing wasn't able to unleash even a fraction of his supreme bone's power before fighting you in a direct clash like a dumb dog. Have you seen such a stupid assassin before? Asked Long Chen. Well, that doesn't matter. He said that he's the Bloodkill Hall's #1 expert, so he must be the Bloodkill Hall's #1 expert. Although Guoran continued quibbling, his tone weakened a great deal. Through this reminder, it truly seemed that there were some problems with this fellow. Was an assassin who fought people directly really an assassin? I've seen the 9 Underworld Hall's Palace Master, Liao Bensong. I've also seen the Bloodkill Hall's Palace Master, Enputa. To tell the truth, both of them gave me a similar sense of pressure. Simply that in terms of intelligence, Enputa is far ahead of Liao Bensong. Perhaps I'd believe it if Ji Wuing was from the 9 Underworld Hall, but if you were to say that he was from the Bloodkill Hall and someone that Enputa personally taught, I'd refuse to believe it even if you beat me to death. Long Chen shook his head. Boss, are you saying that he wasn't from the Bloodkill Hall? Was he a fake? Asked Guoran. No. His movement art is truly the Bloodkill Hall's technique. Furthermore, those people that I killed that day were also true assassins of the Bloodkill Hall, said Long Chen. Boss, you're confusing me. Is Ji Wuing from the Bloodkill Hall or not? Asked Guoran. I'm confused too. He's definitely from the Bloodkill Hall, but I have no idea what Enputa raised such an idiot for, said Long Chen, feeling vexed. Enputa was a crafty old fox. He definitely wouldn't raise such an idiot. But it was impossible for someone with a supreme bone to appear in the Bloodkill Hall and have Enputa not notice. So the question was, what was his goal? Even Long Chen couldn't see through Enputa. That damn fatty had a stomach full of sinister schemes. Long Chen had to be wary of him. Who cares? Enputa is just a world king. Do we need to fear him? Guoran shrugged the confusion off. However, Long Chen shook his head. Your ego is getting inflated. Let me tell you, your performance this time was only so perfect because Ji Wuing was cooperating with you idiotically. It doesn't mean that you really have the power of a supreme expert. Other than that, you should not view Enputa as inferior just because you've seen some half-step divine venerates. You should understand that all those people are immortal cultivators, while Enputa is a god cultivator. He has believers throughout the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Even though he is a world king, his faith energy allows him to unleash the full power of a world domain divine item. World domain divine items are said to possess enough power to destroy an entire prefecture. Have you seen such power yet? No, not yet. All the half-step divine venerates you've seen are immortal cultivators. Since you haven't seen a true god cultivator yet, you can't imagine how terrifying they are. As for an expert like Enputa, he can sweep through those half-step divine venerates. Don't get too confident, or you'll suffer a miserable defeat, warned Long Chen. Guoran truly was growing too confident with his new supreme bone. Long Chen had to knock him down a bit, or this fellow would really think that he was unrivaled. 3 days later, Xiachen finished expounding the Tao. In front of countless reverent gazes, the 3 of them left the heavenly talisman starfield. In a dark and secluded palace, Enputa was sitting in a swirl of white mist. That white mist was made of faith energy. Master, my supreme bone has finally awakened. Another figure silently appeared within the palace just like a specter. If Long Chen and the others were present, they would definitely be shocked because this person was the person that Guoran had just slain, Ji Wuing. However, this Ji Wuing looked colder and more reserved than the other Ji Wuing. His eyes were like those of a devil. Within this dark palace, they emitted a spectral light that would give others chills. Those eyes did not appear to be the eyes of a human. They were like those of a wild beast, filled with a thirst to kill as if he lived to kill. Enputa smiled and nodded. Excellent. Your little brother's talent has finally been reclaimed by you. You should thank Long Chen. I will surely thank him. I'll use my brother's hand to kill him and express how grateful I am. That man also smiled. These 2 were twin brothers. They appeared almost identical. However, the one that Guoran had killed was called Ji Wuing, while this one was called Ji Wuming. The latter didn't have the slightest grief over his brother's death. Instead, he was gratified. "Let me see your hands," said Imputa. Ji Wuming extended his hands. Both of his palms were covered in heavenly Tao runes, emitting boundless power. Most importantly, there seemed to be some connection between his hands. "Good, very good. Your Ji family's bloodline inheritance can only be perfectly displayed by your hands. Your supreme bone can control time, but now your other hand can control space. When you become an immortal king, your supreme bones will undergo a heaven-toppling transformation. At that time, you will no longer have any rivals within the same realm. For you to be able to control space-time, I, Imputa, have finally obtained a successor worthy of carrying on my legacy. When I pass down my full faith energy to you as well, I'll watch as you sweep through everyone in this era. You will turn the Bloodkill Hall into a legend of the assassin world." Imputa laughed delightedly when he looked at Ji Wuming's hands. "It's all thanks to Master that I could reach this point." Ji Wuming knelt reverently. "There's no need for courteous words between master and disciple. I, Imputa, have no child or heir. You are my only disciple. You are like my son, so what is mine is yours. However, even if you can control both supreme bones, don't get too careless. You need to keep working hard. Once you reach Master's realm, you can assist the Divine Venerate in his important affairs," said Imputa, feeling gratified. "Master, your disciple will become a world king soon and then a Divine Venerate. Why must you serve others? Wouldn't it be better to be king? When the time comes dash." "Silence!" Imputa's joyful expression instantly changed. He roared so loudly that the palace quivered. As a result, divine might raged and faith energy gushed out angrily. Ji Wuming was forced to kneel by a terrifying pressure. He couldn't move and was horrified. "You cannot be disrespectful to Divine Venerate Brahma at any time. Otherwise, even if you are my most beloved disciple, I will kill you," shouted Imputa. "Yes, yes. Disciple understands his mistake." Ji Wuming began to sweat. He kowtowed piously. Only then did Imputa retract his aura. Ji Wuming was terrified inside. At that moment, he finally experienced just how terrifying of an existence his master was. In front of Imputa, he was like an ant. He had previously managed to kill a half-step Divine Venerate, and now he had even obtained Ji Wuming's supreme bone. With both supreme bones awakening, his confidence instantly soared. He had even felt that his current power might not be inferior to his master's. However, his newfound confidence was instantly shattered. Imputa hadn't even attacked, but just his aura already made him unable to move. Killing him required nothing more than a thought for Imputa. Seeing Ji Wuming quivering and kneeling, Imputa's expression softened. He then patted Ji Wuming's shoulder. "Child, remember, you should never form the thought of betraying Divine Venerate Brahma. He is a mighty and great person who cannot be blasphemed. The reason you could even think of such a thing is because your ego has inflated too much. But a frog in a well cannot speak of the ocean. I will put it frankly to you. The current you is just like a frog at the bottom of a well. Let us not talk of Divine Venerate Brahma. Even in the same realm, there are many people that you cannot fight right now. You need more tempering. Your arrogance shows that you are still young. However, many people will only ever be young in their lifetime due to that arrogance. They won't get a chance to grow up. Disciple will remember Master's teachings. Promised Ji Wuming. His head lowered. Imputa looked at him. Why are you hesitating? Say what you want to say. As long as it doesn't offend Lord Brahma, it's fine. Ji Wuming raised his head and nervously said, Compared to Divine Venerate Brahma and Master, Disciple is naturally a frog at the bottom of a well. The light of a firefly doesn't dare to compete with the moonlight. But you say that there are many people that I cannot match in the same realm? Disciple doesn't quite believe it. Are you saying that I am still not a match for Longchun? Imputa was silent for a moment. Longchun didn't fight in the heavenly talisman starfield, but his aura is heavier than before. It was only through an ordinary photographic jade, so it's difficult for me to judge his current strength. You have a pair of supreme bones now. Although you can only control a trace of their space and time energy, you have mastered 70% of my assassination arts. I feel like if you were to fight, you would be relatively even. Victory or defeat would likely depend on luck. How can that be? Is Long Chun really so powerful? He's nothing more than an ascender from the lower plane. He has no foundation and has to fight for every bit that he obtains. As for myself, my G family is one of the immemorial divine families. I am also the disciple with the purest bloodline. With my family's foundation and your teachings, I've worked day and night at my cultivation. I've never slacked off. And even then, I can only barely match him? Asked Ji Wuming, unable to accept this. It had to be known that Long Chun came from the lower plane. The lower plane's spiritual chi, resources, inheritances, and other conditions were all inferior to the immortal worlds. To say that Ji Wuming was only a match for Long Chun, wasn't that calling him trash? Long Chun is a variant. Let alone you, even I cannot see through him. But when I said that there were others in the same realm who could beat you, I wasn't talking about Long Chun. I was talking about Dong Mingyu. Suddenly, Enputa pulled off the clothing on his chest, revealing a terrible wound. Ji Wuming cried out in shock. Master, you! There was a thumb-sized hole in Enputa's chest, and scars stretched out of it like a spiderweb. It looked to be an old injury. This wound pierced all the way through Enputa's body. Even though the outer area had healed, the core still had blood seeping out of it. Master, how were you injured? Who did it? Ji Wuming was shocked. This happened 47,000 years ago. I was stabbed by someone, said Enputa. 47,000 years ago? But... Ji Wuming looked at the wound speechlessly. Just who was capable of injuring an expert like Enputa? And even if they could wound him, how were they capable of inflicting a wound that wouldn't heal even after so long? Master, are you using this wound to warn me not to be arrogant? You want me to reserve myself? Disciple knows his mistake. Ji Wuming once more apologized. Enputa shook his head. No, this wound isn't something that I kept intentionally. It is a wound that I am unable to heal. The energy of night dark resides within it, and it is a kind of powerful curse. It won't affect me during the day, but every time the dark night descends, the wound splits open. It has been affecting me for 47,000 years. Otherwise, I would have long since advanced and killed that idiot Liao Bensong. Ji Wuming was completely shocked. What kind of power could resist even his master's faith energy? Master, who did it? Yi Wuxing, a name that shakes the heart of countless people in the 9 heavens and 10 lands, the assassin of the night. She has a nickname, Silence of the Night. As soon as you mention the silence of the night, everyone from the senior generation quivers. Furthermore, Silence of the Night is an ancient, desolate manifestation. Her night-dark energy is one of the most terrifying laws, and this wound she inflicted on me is something that even divine venerate Brahma is unable to heal. As long as Yi Wuxing doesn't die, her curse will follow me forever. This is why I have only mobilized my avatars for so many years. My true body must remain here. I have been accumulating faith energy all these years in preparation of removing her curse. Other than killing her, this is the only way to break this curse, said Enputa. Ji Wuming's heart pounded wildly. He had not expected there to be someone so terrifying in this world. He finally understood what it meant for there always to be heavens beyond the heavens. Enputa straightened his clothes once more. He lightly said, In that battle 47,000 years ago, I almost fell to Yi Wuxing's hands. If divine venerate Brahma didn't come in time, there would no longer be an Enputa in this world. Since I haven't seen her in so many years, Yi Wuxing has probably advanced to the divine venerate realm. However, I have also profited from this injury. I had more time to focus on spreading my believers and gathering faith energy. While my realm stayed stuck at the peak of the World King realm, it caused my foundation to grow even steadier. By guarding against pride and impatience, my mental realm has also grown stronger. I have comprehended many of the principles that divine venerate Brahma expounded. Even though I am only a world king, an ordinary divine venerate will simply be slaughtered in front of me. Once I become a divine venerate, I will once more challenge Yi Wuxing. I will repay the humiliation that she gave me 100-fold. A sinister smile appeared on Enputa's face. His hatred for Yi Wuxing had already sunk into his bones. Enputa continued, I showed you this wound to tell you to put away your arrogance and inflated heart. As an assassin, those two things are the greatest taboos. They can take your life at any time. When I said that there were many people in the same realm that could fight you, I simply wanted you to know that you aren't unrivaled. One of those rivals is Dong Mingyu, Yi Wuxing's disciple. According to my current information, Dong Mingyu has awakened the Night Dark manifestation, meaning that she is exceptionally talented, to the point that she is receiving Yi Wuxing's true inheritance. Yi Wuxing is extremely prideful. Although she has accepted a few ordinary disciples, no one has ever been looked upon so favorably. But Dong Mingyu has been following Yi Wuxing all this time and has passed through countless trials. She also assassinated a half-step divine venerate a full month earlier than you. What? Ji Wuming was shocked. It had to be known that to assassinate that half-step divine venerate, he had pushed himself to his limit, and he still almost failed to kill his target. But then, Dong Mingyu had assassinated a half-step divine venerate a month earlier than him? He knew that Dong Mingyu was even younger than him. Regretfully, even Enputa could not obtain the full information on Dong Mingyu. If he were to learn that Dong Mingyu was also an ascender from the lower plane, he would be even more shocked. Wuming, remember? An assassin can never be arrogant. Otherwise, they will not be far from death. An assassin is a viper hiding in the dark. Who cares how powerful the target is? The only question is whether or not you can bite their vitals in one blow. If you can, then all their power is meaningless. They are ultimately only prey that falls to your hands. A calm heart, speedy reactions, accurate calculations, and a cool head. These are the most important things to an assassin. They might even be more important than your assassination arts, said Enputa. Disciple understands. Master, don't worry. Disciple won't let you down. Ji Wuming bowed. The current him had once more returned to his calm and reserved self. Seeing him lacking the slightest impatience or arrogance, Enputa smiled and nodded. He was very satisfied with this disciple of his. Has your little brother's death caused any reaction from your family? Asked Enputa. Master is wise. You had me let him think that he was unrivaled. Even when he strutted around me, I didn't let him affect me, making him look down on me. After learning a few superficial techniques, he called himself the Bloodkill Hall's #1 expert. Also, after buying a few disciples and having them support him, he swaggered around the world. I even mentioned it to my father several times, but they ignored my warnings. Now that he's dead, they can't blame me. I can simply say that Ji Wuing sent me the seed of his supreme bone before his death to avenge him. As for Master's actions, they are untraceable. Furthermore, even if they suspect anything, it's meaningless. I now have 2 supreme bones, so who can do anything to me? With your support, none of them dare to do anything to me. Based on the information my trusted aide in the family transmitted to me, the Ji family is currently sending experts to the Heavenly Talisman Starfield to chase after Long Chen's group, said Ji Wuming with a smile. Enputa nodded. Everything is going as predicted. After your brother's death, your father will definitely be suspicious, but he can't do anything. The Ji family will be yours, and my Bloodkill Hall will also be yours. As long as he isn't a fool, he can only accept it. As for revenge, don't force it. Just put on an act. Long Chun has a close relationship with the Wine God Palace, and they are not a good existence to provoke. Rather than alerting him of your existence, it would be better to patiently wait for your chance. All right, then I'm going to talk to my father, said Ji Wuming. Seeing that Enputa had no further instructions, he bowed to him, and his figure slowly faded away. Once Ji Wuming left, Enputa touched the wound on his chest. An expression of rancor then appeared on his face. Yi Wuxing, just wait. Once my disciple kills your disciple, I will personally cut off your head. I swept through the 4 seas and crossed 1,000 mountains, causing huge billows in heaven and earth. Who can resist my supreme divine might? If you need a peerless hero, you can find Guoran. Xiachen, how does that sound? Does it match my current status and style? A flying boat calmly flew through the air. On it, Guoran proudly chanted his new composition. You should give up this chant of yours. The beginning still hasn't changed since the Martial Heaven continent era. You know that there's no such thing as the 4 seas and 1,000 mountains in the immortal world, right? If you don't have the talent, don't pretend like you do. Why are you always trying to learn from that fellow Ammonian? Xiachen was a bit speechless. This composition of Guoran's was made with his utmost effort. After so many years, the last half had gone through countless changes, making it seem like he was some poet. But it only embarrassed Long Chun and the others to hear it over and over again. No, without enough power, there won't be a good showing off. Thus, without the opening line, it would feel like I didn't exist by boss's side. I can't accept people only remembering boss's name and not even knowing who I am. That would be far too hurtful. If the verse is trash, it doesn't matter. It's fine as long as it draws attention, said Guoran without minding it. If you only want to find a sense of existence, then this verse is fine. After all, you might be the only one of the few people in the world capable of making up such a bad verse. Most importantly, when it comes to someone who dares to so shamelessly shout it, you are probably all alone. In this regard, I believe you'll get many people to remember you. After all, only an extraordinary person can reach such a realm of shamelessness, said Xiachen. When it comes to shamelessness, I still admire Ammonian. He's truly shameless. I have to learn more from him in this regard, said Guoran with a shameless laugh. Xiachen was truly speechless now. No wonder this fellow was so shameless. He was competing with Ammonian. No one else could compare to the two of them. Slow down a bit. We have to turn a bit up ahead to get rent from this city, said Guoran. Boom! The flying boat stopped in the air, and Xiachen and Guoran flew into the city. After that, Xiachen threw out a talisman that instantly pierced the Soaring Dragon Company's grand formation. Guoran destroyed the Soaring Dragon Company's building with a single punch and directly plundered the treasury. They then turned and left. Everything occurred in just a few blinks of an eye. Nice job! Guoran immediately flew back to the flying boat with Xiachen. After that, the flying boat made an arrogant arc in the sky before leaving under a torrent of curses from the Soaring Dragon Company's experts. Their movements were so proficient to the point of making people speechless. Most experts in the city didn't even know what was happening even after the flying boat left. At this moment, the flustered and exasperated Soaring Dragon Company's experts and a group of people were staring at them blankly. As usual, we'll take what we each need and leave the useless stuff to boss. Xiachen and Guoran got to work in the flying boat. They had plundered over 70 of the Soaring Dragon Company's treasuries. Since Xiachen hadn't brought anything from the Spirit Rune Pavilion, he needed to start over. Hence, the Soaring Dragon Company became his main sponsor. Both of their pockets were already overflowing after plundering 70 of their treasuries. Despite that, Xiachen was still missing quite a few precious materials. Anyway, Long Chun had said to plunder the Soaring Dragon Company as much as they wanted, and the missing materials would be made up for by the Huayun Trading Company. Xiachen and Guoran were super efficient. Those grand formations of the Soaring Dragon Company might as well not be there in front of Xiachen. He broke them effortlessly. Furthermore, with his formation discs, Xiachen could accurately find the locations of their treasuries. Then Guoran would use his supreme bone to break all other obstacles in their way and snatch it. After that, the two would immediately leave. Their cooperation was flawless. On their best day, they managed to plunder 20 of their treasuries. Because of this activity, Xiachen walked out of Gong Sun Zi's shadow quickly. Together with Guoran, they were like money grubbers, busying themselves with plundering and splitting their ill-gotten loot all day. There was so much loot to go through that they were too busy for anything else. As for Long Chen, he spent all day refining and consuming pills. He could already feel that the Nethergate star was on the verge of turning violet. Once it did, it would be time to condense the 7th star, the Violet Tower star. Half a month later, the flying boat stopped in a deep mountain range, and Long Chun suddenly let out a howl. As violet chi burst out of his entire body, the wild power blasted apart the surrounding mountains. Chi waves scoured the land. Long Chen's sixth star finally turned fully violet. After that, a violet whirlpool appeared beneath Long Chen's dantian. When it manifested, violet chi from all 6 stars surged toward the current in a never-ending cycle. That whirlpool looked like a gaping maw that would never be satisfied. It devoured the violet chi from all 6 stars. Not only that, but the violet clouds surrounding the 108,000 stars were also devoured. Long Chen jumped in shock. He had not expected the formation of the 7th star to require such a huge amount of energy. The violet chi of the 6 stars and the violet clouds of the 108,000 stars were all absorbed, and it still wasn't done. There were signs of the Feng Fu, Alioth, Life Fate, Enlightenment Palace, Divine Gate, and Nethergate stars contracting, almost withering. The 108,000 stars also started showing signs of growing listless. Long Chen was horrified by that. How could the 7th star be so greedy that it was trying to devour the energy of all the stars? Just as Long Chen was worried that the 7th star would destroy all of his stars, it finally stopped devouring their energy. After that, the violet whirlpool actually began to spin in the opposite direction. The Feng Fu, Alioth, Life Fate, Enlightenment Palace, Divine Gate, and Nethergate stars received their energy back from the whirlpool. At the same time, the 108,000 stars thrummed with life once more, and the violet clouds appeared above them. Everything returned to normal. However, the starry sea seemed to have come alive now and was moving according to a certain rhythm. As for the whirlpool beneath Long Chen's dantian, it slowly dissipated. Now there was a violet gas cloud the size of a grain of rice at its core. Despite being small, it seemed to contain immense power. This small gas cloud contained a huge amount of violet chi, and Long Chen felt it thrumming through his body as well. Even without him intentionally circulating it, the violet chi filled his body, flowing through every vein and nourishing every inch of his body. Previously, if he wanted to use his violet chi, he had to use his starry sea. But now, wherever he willed it, the violet chi would appear. The amount of violet chi in his body had shrunk, but there was a huge difference in quality. If his previous violet chi was like a thick strand of hemp that could carry 1,000 tons, then his current violet chi was like a strand of silk that could carry tens of thousands of tons. Violet Tower Star, you finally appeared. Hee. Now I have confidence in going to the 9 Underworld Island. Long Chen clenched his fist. Sensing the powerful violet chi in his body, he smiled. Move out. Target. 9 Underworld Island.